You ever speak to me like that again, better be wearing a cup.
Baby steps.
One break, I'm in
Okay, friends, let's everybody take your positions, please. Here we go. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, rolling. Dave!
And
Dave!
Unchained.
welcome to Dave and Dave Unchained, a Van Halen podcast. I'm Dave.
And I'm Dave.
And we are at episode 99, Dave. We are one away from 100, which, by the way, is going to fall on our 8th anniversary, if you can believe that.
Wow, how did that happen?
I don't know, but it happened. You know what I mean?
Wow, double whammy, I tell you.
Double whammy. So that'll be next time, but in the meantime, we got lots of Van Halen news to get to. So let's get to some Van Halen news.
Van Halen.
Well, we got some more details about the Alex Van Halen book Brothers, which is coming out October 2nd from HarperCollins. Now, we know so far that it's 384 pages, hardcover book, with a list price of $32. It's also going to be a 720-minute audiobook and an e-book. Curious to see if Alex is going to be the one reading it. That should be interesting. I think he is, though. Now we got...
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently. So we got some details as to what's going on in the book, and this is the blurb that was released after our last Van Halen news. So I'm going to read it to you. It says, in this intimate and open account, nothing like any rock and roll memoir you've ever read, Alex Van Halen shares his personal story of family, friendship, music, and brotherly love in a remarkable tribute to his beloved brother and bandmate. Told with acclaimed New Yorker writer Ariel Levy, Brothers is a 70-year-old drummer, Alex Van Halen's love letter to his younger brother Edward, maybe Ed, but never Eddie, written while still mourning his untimely death. In his rough yet sweet voice, Alex recounts the brothers' childhood, first in the Netherlands, then in working-class Pasadena, California, with an itinerant musician father and a very proper Indonesian-born mother, the kind of mom who admonished her boys to always wear a suit no matter how famous they became. A woman who was both proud and practical, nonchalant about taking a doggy bag from a star-studded dinner. He also shares tales of musical politics, infighting, and plenty of bad boy behavior. But mostly his is a story of brotherhood, music, and enduring love. I was with him from day one, Alex writes. We shared the experience of coming to this country and figuring out how to fit in. We shared a record player, an 800-square-foot house, a mom and dad, and a work ethic. Later we shared the back of a tour bus, alcoholism, the experience of becoming famous, and of becoming fathers and uncles, and of spending more hours in the studio than I've ever spent doing anything else in this life. We share a depth of understanding that most people can only hope to achieve in a lifetime. There has never been an account of them or the band, and Alex wants to set the record straight on Eddie's life and death. And apparently it's going to contain never-before-seen photos from Alex's private archives. So, interesting. I take from that this is going to be definitely more of a personal story than a band story. What do you think?
I agree. You can't exclude the band part because
No.
it's such a big part of their lives. But yeah, it's basically going to be, like the promo said, a tribute to his brother. I don't think it's going to be a tell-all book. I don't think he's going to whitewash stuff either, but I don't think he's going to go out of his way to dish the dirt. But I think it does sound like he wants to set the record straight on certain things that may have been printed in the past or said in the past, possibly by other band members, I'm guessing, and that's where the band dynamics will come in. But I'm super psyched to read this thing, and I tell you, I don't think I've ever done an audiobook in my life, but I may do this one if Alex is reading it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Dave, my mother always used to say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Right.
Well, I think it's worth it this time to get the audiobook to hear how he says it in addition to the printed word. So I'm stoked for this book.
I am guessing that he's not going to elaborate heavily on Sam or Roth, but I think when he does, the punches will be hard and fast. That's what I think. I think he's going to get directly to the point and really maybe sharpen the tip a little bit on some of that, because it sounds like he's a little ticked about all the different things that have been printed, and the whole set the record straight thing makes me feel like it's going to be addressed, and it'll be addressed directly and probably curtly, but I would imagine the whole thing is going to be very much a tale of his story about coming to this country and Ed and him and their relationship and this and that. I think the band is going to be a background, to be honest with you. It sounds like that. You know?
I agree with you.
Yeah. So it should be interesting read either way, and we will certainly look forward to getting into that in the fall. Now, coming up this summer, as we've all talked about in the past, is the Best of All Worlds tour. Now, Sammy leaked a set list, and I wanted to go over that with you, Dave. Now, we're going to read the set list, and then we'll break it down. So, he leaked this set list on social media. Good Enough, Pound Cake, Panama, One Way to Rock, Top of the World, Runaround, 5150, Ain't Talking About Love, Heavy Metal, Mas Tequila, Finish What You Started, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy, Best of Both Worlds, Satch Boogie, Summer Song, Eagles Fly, Seventh Seal, Right Now, Love Walks In, Why Can't This Be Love, I Can't Drive 55. Then Encores, which is a medley of everything except, I think, Father Time and When It's Love. It says here, Space Station number 5, Oh Yeah, Jump, Father Time and When It's Love. Oh, by the way, there's also a question mark written on the side, Summer Nights and Dreams, question mark. So now you're looking at 5 songs from 5150. Good Enough, Best of Both Worlds, Love Walks In, Why Can't This Be Love, and 5150. That's half the album right there. So that's a really strong outing. OU812, pretty standard. Finish What You Started and When It's Love. Not much off the bone there. The Fuck album.
Fine.
Yeah, that's fine. The Fuck album gets Pound Cake, Top of the World, Run Around Right Now, which they're going with the 4 singles there. Balance, just the 7th Seal, which is interesting. I thought we'd see more of that. No Humans Being, by the way, which is surprising. The Roth era, we're looking at Ain't Talking About Love and Jump in a medley. So that doesn't look like it's getting a lot of highlight, and I thought Mike was going to go a little deeper on some of the cuts there, so I don't know what's going on there. Satch is getting 2 songs, Satch Boogie and Summer Song, so that's wild. Chickenfoot gets Oh Yeah, tossed into a medley. Montrose gets the same treatment, Space Station number 5, an interesting choice, tossed into the medley. Now, Sammy is going to be doing One Way to Rock, Heavy Metal, Mas Tequila, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy, Eagles Fly, I Can't Drive 55, and Father Time. Now, number 1, I thought there might have been a little more deep cuts, but I guess 7th Seal is a deep cut, and I guess 5150 and Good Enough is a deep cut. But that's really the only sort of deeper cuts that they're doing. Everything else is singles. Summer Nights, I am shocked that they're not doing, but we did talk about that song is not apparently easy to pull off. So maybe they're having trouble with that one, you know?
Maybe, although I agree with you. If you're going to do a summer tour, that seems like a slam dunk of a song to do.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest one to play if you don't have the right guitar.
And Dreams, look, you might as well let go of Dreams because we all know Sammy can't hit those notes. Understandable. I can understand. I would rather him say, I can't do Dreams than do Dreams. You know what I mean? I would rather
unless he does it like he's done in the past, where he does an acoustic version of it.
Which is a waste, yeah. Which is a waste. I don't quite understand closing the show with Father Time and When It's Love. That's sort of a real downer.
And I remember the Van Halen 2004 tour, I think they closed with When It's Love. And I was kind of like, that's not the best choice.
That is not a great fucking song. But anyway, there's a lot of songs here. Curious to see what makes it. He's giving Satriani 2 songs. I guess Mike is just going to do that Ain't Talking About Love sing-along thing?
Well, first of all, I didn't catch that was a medley. That's interesting.
Well, the ending is a medley. Apparently, Space Station number 5, Oh Yeah, which is the Chickenfoot song, and Jump are like a medley. And then I think he does weird. Father Time and When It's Love. First of all, 3 strange songs to put together. First of all, I thought they'd pick a different Chickenfoot song like Bigfoot, or maybe My Kind of
Oh,
Girl.
yeah, it's a good sing-along
Well,
song.
I guess it is, yeah. I guess that was their first single, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. But Space Station number 5 is surprising. That's sort of a deeper cut for Montrose.
I disagree. I think it's one of the better-known Montrose songs from that first album.
Well, I guess
and
so.
plus, Sammy wrote it.
Yeah, that's true. Sammy wrote it. All right, so interesting. What are your thoughts on this set list? What do you think?
Well, first thing, I want to take a step back and point out this is one of several set lists he was working on. The picture of the set list comes from his Instagram video,
Right.
which shows him working on several set lists. It's tough to see the other ones because they're shown quickly on the video, but this is just one of several he's working on, and at the end of the video, he even says, what songs do you want to hear? Help me with the set list. So it's obviously not finalized yet by any stretch of the imagination, but you can see where they're going with this. Lots of Van Halen, few deep cuts, some solo songs. It looks like Joe's getting a couple of solo songs. I love Joe, and I love hearing him play, and those are two solid songs.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think he should get more than one, quite frankly.
I got news for you. That is what I like to call the Sammy Oasis in the set. He's taking a break.
Oh, no, I totally... Listen, he's got to save his energy up, because if he's doing that scream at the beginning of Space Station number 5, he better be ready. He better be ready. That's why that song's towards the end of the set list, by the way, because he's going to blow his vocal cords out after doing that. But as an overall set list, look, you and I can go back all day and say he should be doing this song instead of that song. And the problem is when you're diehard fans like us, we know the catalog so well, we can start calling that stuff out.
Right.
But I think Sam is also aware of the non-diehard fans who are coming to see this show.
Yeah.
So he's got to still keep it somewhat high level and sticking to the hits. So as a possible set list, it's not bad. Not bad at all. We'll see what he comes up with. And like you've said before, hopefully he'll be rotating songs in and out depending what show it is. But this picture of the set list got a lot of chatter online.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people voicing their opinions about that.
Yeah.
But hey, it's his show.
Yeah.
And he gets to choose what he wants. I mean, you could go in there and say, he should be doing more deeper cuts. He should be doing more chicken foot. He should be doing more old school Sammy. I mean, the problem is the guy's been around so long, has been part of so many albums. Oh, Dave, here's one observation somebody made that I didn't catch that would be an interesting addition. There's no Hagar Schoen Aronson Shreve.
Oh, I didn't think you were going to see that.
No, I know. And that's another deep cut. But,
Yeah.
you know, if it's best of all worlds, that's a world, right?
Right. No, I
That's-
hear you. Yeah, I understand. Top of the Rock would have been perfect.
Yeah,
but-
somebody else suggested that too.
Yeah, that would have been-
Yeah, I hear you, Dave. I mean, unless Neil Schon comes on stage one night, that's the only possible way you're going to hear something from that album. But yeah, you know what? Overall, pretty good. I mean, if he did that set list, I'd walk out being happy and I wouldn't be disappointed.
Yeah, that's true. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty full show. If you look at the structure of the set list, it's very key. You got like 7 songs, and then he gets a break. And then it's like 5, 6 songs, and then he gets a break. And then they go to the end, and then he gets a break. So you can see it's sort of staggered like that. So, you know, Sammy can get a vocal break. I mean, the guy is, 77 years old? You got to give him a break.
Hey, listen, if that's what he's got to do, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fault a guy in his mid-70s for doing that.
He's not even mid, he's late 70s. So here's the other thing. Now, what people are not giving him a break about is people are not happy with the VIP packages that are being available. The Best of All World VIP package contains 1 premium reserve ticket, which means like quality seat, specialized design Sammy Hagar custom jersey, a collectible Best of All Worlds lithograph poster, a Red Rocker lager koozie with a bottle opener set, a commemorative tour laminate with lanyard, a commemorative ticket, and there's a limited availability of these VIP packages. So, what do you think this runs, Dave? $428, $438, around there, roughly. And people are a little pissed because there's no band meet and greet included, there's no photos, no autographs, and people are feeling a little chinsed. What do you think?
No, I agree. If there's not a sound check or a meet and greet or even something autographed by Sam and the band, then it's really a ripoff. You know what it is? It's the tchotchke bag. That's
Right.
what it is. It's kind of like the bag they give you when you go to the Grammys or the Academy Awards and you have to declare it as income on your tax return. That's what it feels like. It feels like a whole bunch of tchotchkes added to disguise the fact that you're paying a whole lot more than you should be for a good seat.
Yep, that's the truth. Now, Sam went out with the Circle on the Rock Legends cruise, and he did several shows. He did like poolside shows, and he also did a theater show. Here's some of the set list there. One Way to Rock, Bigfoot, Pound Cake, Three Lock Box, Top of the World, Good Enough, Rock Candy, Finish What You Started, Mas Tequila, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy, a medley of Panama and Ain't Talking About Love, Good Times, Bad Times, Right Now, Why Can't This Be Love, Heavy Metal, Best of Both Worlds, Eagles Fly. So, interesting, a little different there. And then here's another one. He did another poolside thing, which was Good Enough, Runaround, One Way to Rock, Three Lock Box, Sexy Little Thing, Little White Lie, Finish What You Started, Mas Tequila, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy, Running with the Devil, Whole Lot of Love, Right Now, Why Can't This Be Love, Heavy Metal, I Can't Try 55, and When It's Love. So that was a totally different kind of set. Kind of, you could tell what he's working out here a little bit. You know, Bigfoot might be subbing in for Oh Yeah, or maybe Running with the Devil will sub in for Ain't Talking About Love. Little White Lie might sub in for something else. You just never know. And then he did another one, which was One Way to Rock, Pound Cake, Three Lock Box, Top of the World, Good Enough, Rock Candy, Finish What You Started, Mas Tequila, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy, Ain't Talking About Love, Rock and Roll, Right Now, Why Can't This Be Love, Heavy Metal, I Can't Try 55, and Father Time. So obviously he's mixing it up, and apparently, according to his set list that he said, they have about 40 songs worked up that they're going to rotate. So, you know, if that's 26 that we noted on that set list that we got to peek at, perhaps there's another 14 that they're going to be rotating in and out. So, interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe. I think on the cruise, you definitely have to mix it up because you got the same people seeing the show, right?
Yeah.
So you can't be doing the same show on one end of the boat that you're going to do at the other end of the boat the next day. So kudos to him for mixing it up. And yeah, maybe he's trying different stuff out to see how it works. But they're playing with Vic. You really can't
It's not like they're playing with Joe, right?
until Satch is there, right?
Right, that's true.
And Satch, you know, he's known for being very scientific
Right.
and nailing it down, whereas Sam is kind of like, all right, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
We're gonna practice.
Yeah,
And, you know,
yeah.
Joe's like, no, we are going to practice. Or I am anyway.
Right.
Because that's how that guy rolls.
Exactly. So now Michael Anthony jumped on stage with Billy F. Gibbons when they played on the Rock Legends cruise in February. He came out in a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops. No bass, by the way. And he took the Dusty Hill vocal parts on Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers. Here's a clip. So now, obviously, Mike is very familiar with the song because Van Halen used to do that song live as a cover on the Diver Down tour and also in the clubs. What did you think of this, Dave?
I thought that was awesome. Talk about digging up an old live chestnut.
Yeah.
That was just awesome to watch as an
Right.
old school fan.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now, believe it or not, Sammy is doing another business. Holy shit. Well, he's opening up Sammy's Island at the Palms Pool in Las Vegas, and it's opening May 17th, and it's taking over the former Soak Pool and Chaos Day Club. So the signature party platform is an island in the middle of the deck, and it's at the Palms Pool. Gonna have like a tropical vibe that fits sort of the Cabo Wabo concept. and it's going to be a rock party oasis. Sammy said it doesn't have to be an entire resort, but the place is going to have taste. And I got my own taste, so I know what I like, and that's what we're going to create. And the idea of Sammy's Island has been swimming around in Sam's head for at least since last summer when he headlined the Pearl Concert Theater there. He found that the Palms was the right hotel that had the architecture for this type of venue. He thinks it'll appeal to both locals and tourists, and he's going to do a cross-promotion highlighting signature food with rock and roll and, of course, all his drinks, right? So he's going to have the Tiki Bar there serving Sammy's Beach Bar rum, Sammy's Beach Bar canned cocktails, his Santo Tequila, his Santo Mezquila, and he's going to have a menu that has Baja breakfast burritos, egg sandwiches, chicken tinga nachos, chicken wings, Veracruz chopped salads, and he's also going to be making an appearance here and there. He says, I will be here as often as possible and a lot more than anybody expects. He's eager to show off the island to his Redhead fan community and Las Vegas residents. The outdoor club will host live poolside events featuring a variety of musical acts from headliners to Vegas favorites. Apparently he's going to be calling all his friends to come down there and play, and Sammy's going to jam with them. So what do you think of that, Dave?
Another venture by Sam. He's ready to go.
Never ends.
Right in his wheelhouse. He's been doing restaurants and things like that of one kind or another for a while now.
Yeah.
So this is just the latest concept that he's working on. It sounds really cool. Sounds like fun. If we ever get to Vegas again, Dave, we'll have to check it out.
Have to check it out. Yep, absolutely. He also is partnering with Rick Springfield. They once collaborated on the song I've Done Everything for You, which was a hit single for Springfield written by Sammy, and now the two musicians have teamed up to relaunch one of Hagar's spirit lines, which is a collection of flavored rums called Sammy's Beach Bar Rum, and the brand was first started by Hagar, but Springfield is now becoming a partner and co-owner of the business. Springfield said, our first collaboration was a home run, so we thought we'd try it again, and he's excited about that. He says, Sammy has such an amazing success in the spirit business, and I wanted to get into it for a while now. And they are doing 3 rums together, a classic white rum, a cola spiced rum, and the Redhead macadamia nut rum. So very interesting. He never stops, this guy. What do you think?
I tell you, he keeps going, and he finds people to keep going with him. So, more power to the guy. Most people are retired sitting back doing nothing. He's sitting back and doing something, and then some.
It's like he wakes up and sneezes businesses. It's amazing.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Speaking of which, though, he did have a little bit of a court battle. Sammy won a court order barring an alleged unauthorized Hollywood location of Cabo Wabo Cantina. The judge ruled that the franchisee, Robert Azinian, was prohibited from using the Cabo Wabo trademarks for any purpose, including a new location on Hollywood Boulevard that sparked the Rockers' lawsuit. The order came amid an escalating legal dispute between Hagar and his former business partner from Cabo Wabo Cantina. Azinian's company, which operated the Hollywood Outpost for years, sued Hagar in September, claiming the singer has repeatedly breached their agreements and then unfairly tried to terminate the deal. The lawsuit claimed that the two sides have been at odds for more than a year over Azinian's concerns that Hagar's company was failing to support the Hollywood franchise. And his lawsuit noted one such grievance, that the rocker himself was not visiting or entertaining at the location. Hagar's company, which is known as Redhead, hit back in January, filing a separate lawsuit in a federal court that accused Azinian of infringing the Cabo Wabo trademarks. The case claimed that the partnership had clearly and lawfully been terminated because of Azinian's own actions, but Azinian had chosen to open the new location in Hollywood anyway. Now, Redhead had asked for an immediate injunction, warning that Azinian was using Hagar's branding, but the company had no oversight over the business, including the quality of the food, and he said that every day the Cabo Wabo Cantina at the new Hollywood location continues to operate under the Cabo Wabo brand soils the name and reputation and goodwill that Redhead has developed. And so Judge Wu has awarded Sammy the win. So Sammy wins again, Dave. He's always coming out a winner, this guy. It's amazing.
Don't mess with Sam's businesses, and don't mess with the Cabo Wabo brand.
Oh, my God.
I mean, he is not going to sit back and take that lightly.
No, not at all. So I wanted to tell you about Wolf, who actually responded to David Lee Roth's recent attack. In an interview with The Morning X, with Barnes and Leslie, he addressed the comments that Roth made in his podcast where he was poking fun at Wolf. We talked about that last time. He was making fun of him, telling backstage stories and all that kinds of stuff. And this is what Wolf had to say about it. I guess I'm honored that he even thinks about me as much as he seems to. I guess you have to take what he says with a grain of salt. Considering that he said he wrote Eruption and came up with the Frankenstein, he said he wrote all those solos that Dad wrote. I guess that's all I can say. I seem to have been born into this Van Halen drama that has come way before me, and I guess now that my dad isn't here to be a target, I guess he went for the next best thing. So, interesting retort, right? He very smartly kind of put it back in Roth's lap. What did you think?
Very politically polite.
Yes, yes.
Like almost Michael Anthony level polite, which is interesting because if it was just some Joe Schmo on the internet, he'd be going back and forth almost at the guy's throat. But when it comes to David Lee Roth, I guess he doesn't just want to go down that rabbit hole with the guy. And I don't say I blame him because I think at the end of the day, he's like, it's just Dave trying to get attention for himself. So I'll just address it and move on with my life and give as little oxygen to it as I possibly can.
Absolutely. Wolf also did an interview with Ultimate Classic Rock where he talked about work he's been doing on a third Mammoth release. He said, granted, we're really early in the process. It wouldn't potentially come out until the second half of the next year, so it's very preliminary. But given that I'm going to be on tour for more than I'm not this year, I'm having fun looking through old ideas. My voice memo app is just filled with random shitty clips of 20 seconds of me strumming on guitar trying to figure something out, like, is this an idea? I think at the time sometimes you're not even convinced, and then you go back and you hear it and you're like, wait, there's something there. So I'm looking through those things and compiling ideas that I've come up with. I'm just taking stock and trying to get my head into a creative space before we hopefully get into the studio soon. So he's already thinking about Mammoth 3, Dave, which he's saying might come out halfway through next year, which would probably land around the summer of 2025. What do you think of that?
Awesome. Bring it on. Always want to hear what new music he's coming up with next.
Absolutely. And as everybody here probably already knows, that he appeared on the Oscars, which took place at the Dolby Theater on Sunday, March 10th, and it was aired on ABC. Of course, he played on the I'm Just Ken song from the Barbie soundtrack, and he played with Slash. And then when the actor Ryan Gosling went out and performed it on the Oscars, Slash appeared, and so did Wolf, and they came out and pretty much blazed the place playing guitar. You only saw Wolf for a kind of a brief second on the TV simulcast because, it took some time before they got Slash in there, and then Wolf came after that. But he was certainly part of that, and he attended with his wife as well as Valerie, and they were on the red carpet doing interviews and stuff like that. So what do you think of that, Dave?
Of course, Valerie was there.
Of course. She didn't leave him alone.
Well, he's got two arms. Doesn't want the one arm to be lonely with just his wife there.
Right.
So, thank you for pointing out that Wolf was barely on the simulcast.
Yeah.
Because I saw pictures of the event afterwards, and I was like, oh, he was on stage.
He was.
I barely caught a glimpse of him, and I was like, is that him? I'm not sure. And then when I saw pictures of it later, I'm like, oh, yeah, he was there. But, they barely gave him any face time at all.
Well, in their defense, it was a massive production because it wasn't just a band with Ryan Gosling singing. They had dancers and set pieces. It was huge. So it would be very hard for a camera to cover all that. And obviously the camera's focused on Ryan Gosling because it is the Oscars and he was up for the role and he was singing the song. And of course, Wolf and Slash were playing and they gave them a shot. Of course, they showed more of Slash because Slash had the lead and then Wolf is sort of playing another line. But he was on there. It was just a huge stage and a monstrous production. That might be the biggest musical production that the Oscars ever saw. That's how big it was. It was huge. It was really cool, and it was really well done, and Ryan Gosling killed it. So it was really cool that he participated, which is why, by the way, he had to cancel a whole bunch of dates on his tour. And here's the funny thing, Dave. I actually saw his last show of the tour. So I went to see him at the Paramount on the 6th of March, and he had other dates past that, but he canceled. But I saw him at that show. It was a fantastic show. It was a headline show at the Paramount on March 6th. He opened up with I'm All Right, went into Right, Epiphany, Miles Above Me, Like a Pastime, Horribly Right, Optimist, Stone, Distance, which he did acoustic, Think It Over, Mammoth, You're to Blame, Take a Bow, and then the encores were Another Celebration at the End of the World and Don't Back Down. So now his voice was in crazy shape. The band was tight as hell. No Frank, by the way, so he must have been busy with Slash. The last time he was at the venue, he opened up for Alter Bridge. You know, let me tell you something. That Miles Above Me, the more I hear it, has massive single potential. Like a Pastime, he did sort of like a new metal ending cap to it, which is cool. Valerie was in the crowd. Everybody knew she was there. She was like on the side, right above on the side of the stage, like in one of the lifts there. Stone was the beautiful centerpiece in the set. No keys on stage anymore, though. He's not using the keys on stage. I guess he's using like the taped keys, kind of like what his dad used to do. He jokingly went into Wonderwall from Oasis, and then he said, I'll be the douche at this party as a joke. And then he started playing it just to joke around. You could tell he was kind of loose on the mic, having fun. And then after he played Distance, the whole crowd went into an Eddie chant, which was really interesting. And then after he played Distance, he said, this is my dad's favorite song, and he went into Think It Over, which was really kind of cool. So, very good show. Mammoth is getting better and better. He's getting stronger and stronger as a performer, so it was always great to see that. Val was there to witness it all, Dave.
Did she have a sign underneath her that said Val is here?
No, she had a sign that says Wolf's mom. By the way, you know what's interesting is I never noticed this before. So I was watching the interview she was doing on the red carpet. She calls him Woofy. I don't know if that's a pronunciation thing. She calls him Woofy, not Wolfie. Or like,
really?
She pronounced it like Woof.
I don't think I've ever caught that. That's interesting.
Like, you know how like people say Wolfman?
Yeah, yeah.
Or like Wolfman? But I've never seen him call himself that. He always says Wolf. But she says Woofy. I don't know.
She's the mom. She
can call whatever she wants, I guess. So that's that. Also wanted to let you guys know about David Lee Roth released an instrumental acoustic guitar track called Drawing Board. Here's a clip. Now, my question is this David Lee Roth on guitar? Is this from the California sessions? What did you think of this, Dave?
I don't think it's from the California sessions.
Okay.
I do think it's him on guitar, on
Okay.
at least one of the guitars,
Okay.
because he only knows how to play in a certain style.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that, but typically what I've heard from him is he only plays in a typical style. That's a style he played in. And quite frankly, the guitar was a little off. So it wasn't...
Right, it wasn't John 5 quality.
No, it was not.
Yeah.
It was not perfect. It was an interesting instrumental, but that's really all it was.
Right, that's true. That's about it. Now, Dave also uploaded a song that he posted, which by a little-known band called the Fooglies, on his YouTube channel. It's called David Lee Roth, the song. I guess people are looking at it as kind of a swipe at Sammy. The lyric reads, Sammy Hagar's not the same. You can drop that singer from extreme. But no matter
Where you walk or run.
there's a little Dave in everyone. So now, here's a clip of the song.
Sammy Hagar's not the same, and you can drop that singer from extreme.
This is the song he also uses to open the Roth show with. What do you think of this, David?
I mean, it's a fun song to listen to. It's kind of like the song Van Halen by
Nerf Herder.
Is this what you wanted? Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar. Is this what you wanted, man? Dave lost his hairline, but you lost your cool, buddy. Can't ride 55. I'll never buy your lousy records again. Again, never 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 again. No! Tomorrow may come. Tomorrow may never come again. Can't you hear Jane crying? She's running with the devil, oh Lord.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's along those lines. So,
Right.
yes, I think we all need a little David Lee Roth,
Right.
but not the mean David Lee Roth that we've seen. Everybody can leave that at home.
Well, Craig Goldie came out and talked a little bit about David Lee Roth during his interview with Brian Cataquet on K-Met, and what he said was he got an opportunity to collaborate with Dave. Goldie recalled how he wound up crossing paths with him, briefly working with Roth when Warner Brothers had given him a deal as a songwriter, and they ended up hooking him up with Dave. He said at the time when they started the Little Ain't Enough project, the original producer was Bob Ezrin. Bob is the guy who did The Wall from Pink Floyd and Destroyer from Kiss. So that's interesting. He said, then I was invited to his private residence, and we would hang out all day. He was one of the nicest, coolest guys, totally intelligent, but totally David Lee Roth. The songwriting sessions resulted in the song Lady Luck, which ended up on A Little Ain't Enough in 1991. However, Ezrin apparently dropped out of the project before Bob Rock came in and became the album producer. And Goldie would not play on the album, as Jason Becker and Steve Hunter would get the nod instead. So what do you think of that story?
Very interesting. I always wondered how Craig Goldie got a song on that album. And it turns out it was just as a songwriter. I always wondered, was he one of the guitarists up for the gig? And, it just didn't materialize, but they used one of his songs anyway. So interesting that it was only in a songwriting capacity. Decent song, and Craig Goldie is certainly no slouch on guitar. He's very gifted. But yeah, always interested to get another little tidbit on what goes on behind the scenes. The Ezrin thing, that's one of those things after I read it, it was like, I think I knew that and forgot.
I never knew that. I was like,
is that
shocked.
right? Really?
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, no,
I can't
felt
imagine
like
Bob Ezrin working with Roth. That seems really out of left field. I mean, Bob Rock totally makes sense to me. Bob Ezrin, I'm surprised at, but that would have been interesting. I wonder why he left.
Yes. Well, we'll just have to get him on the podcast to talk about
That's
it.
true.
I'm sure that'll be really easy.
Exactly. Also want to let you guys know about some boots that came out. A couple things had dropped while we were in between episodes here. Well, the Tokyo Dome video came out. Full show, pro shot, coincide with the double live album. But guess what, folks? It's a gone. So it went into a private link and then it went into the atmosphere. So as we all know, these little golden nuggets come out and then they're snatched away. And boy, was this a really cool video that was like 2 hours long, totally pro shot from the Tokyo Dome show. Dave, what do you think of that?
It was very cool to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody downloaded it before it went bye-bye.
Oh,
So
yeah, I'm sure.
But no, it was cool to watch the show behind the audio, which really makes me wonder. I mean, this wasn't a fully produced video of the show, but it was still really good.
Yeah, it's high quality.
And I'm kind of like, they couldn't throw this on
I
as
know.
like a bonus DVD.
Everybody thinks that, sure.
Because for all the criticism David Lee Roth got for his vocals, which were fair, I'm not going to argue that point, but to see the band visually, I think that would have helped and softened the blow somewhat by watching the band. Yeah, it was good while it lasted.
Yeah, well, they also dropped another video, full show, pro shot in black and white of Van Halen at the Stone Music Festival at ANZ Stadium in Sydney, Australia from 2013. The Tokyo Dome was also from 2013. Killer show, good energy. Van Halen headlined on 4/20, 2013 with Aerosmith, Jimmy Barnes, The Living End, Kings of Chaos, and some other bands. Day 2 featured Billy Joel, Icehouse, Guy Sebastian, Lifehouse, and Diesel. This is the show where everybody was dressed in black pants, white collared shirt, and a black vest. You remember this, Dave?
Yes, right. After some kind of Australian character.
Right, some sort of like sitcom character or something. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if it was a sitcom. I think it was more of like an adventure type character.
I don't know.
I forget. I'm sure one of our Australian listeners can set us straight on this, but yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So now also Fresno 78 came out. This is an 8mm camera that shot the band in this real old kind of cinematic quality. You can see the crowd milling about, the VH banner logo. The sound is clear, cohesive audio clips, but sometimes not full songs. The set list was like On Fire, I'm the One, Atomic Punk, Ain't Talk About Love, Eruption, You Really Got Me, and another piece of I'm the One, which is kind of weird. But let me tell you something. For clips, whoever put this together did a really nice job. It really made it clean, and the sound is clear. One thing that's absolutely unbelievable is the Eruption. The close-up of Eddie performing Eruption, it really is something to see. It really is incredible. But you can see how these guys coming out as an opening act would destroy anybody that was coming after them. So they are just full of energy, off the charts, and just so like bold and cocky. It's just amazing that an opening act would have this level of performance underneath their belt. But it's so true that all those years of them performing before they became major label artists is all right there. They're not a baby band. They're a full-grown band. So when everybody got Van Halen in 1978 to the masses, they were set. They were Van Halen. They were exactly who they are. So what did you think of that, Dave, from Fresno?
That was so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Definitely an improvement made to the video that was already out there. I think there was a watermark. They had gotten rid of the watermark. They cleaned it up. It was just really so good. Where there wasn't video, they interspliced some pictures of the band to keep it going so it wasn't so choppy, which is how I like to watch it.
Right.
When it gets choppy like that, it's kind of distracting.
Yeah, they smoothed it out. Even when they can't give you the visual, they did this cool thing where they took a series of photos and kind of like kept the video going with a series of photos as the audio continues to play. Whoever did it did a really amazing job. And let me tell you something. You could tell they were threading old pieces of 8mm. Whoever did that worked very hard on that.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if that was like the Super 8 they used back in the day or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But, oh, my God, yeah. I mean, kudos to whoever put the work into that because that obviously was a lot of work. So from one fan to another, thank you for that.
Yes, and by the way, we have some exciting news, or we should say potentially exciting news, because you never know in the film industry, but there is talk of Greg Renoff's book, Van Halen Rising, becoming a film, or you never know, it could be a TV show, whatever they decide to do, but Greg talked about it on social media. He said a few years back, my book was optioned by a producer. What that means is the producer and his team had the exclusive right to commission a screenplay and get a deal for a movie based on Van Halen Rising. So he said, fast forward to today, there is a screenplay based on my book written by screenwriter, producer, and director Jeff Wadlow. He said Jeff's enthusiasm for the project is off the charts, and accordingly, he's worked incredibly hard on his script. He says, I can't describe the narrative arc in the script better than Jeff. So he said there's a video link, and they had a video of Jeff talking about it. And here's a clip.
I really want to make a movie about music. And I got sent this book called Van Halen Rising by Greg Renoff that chronicles the story of the band Van Halen basically before they got their record deal. So it doesn't tell the story of what happened when they got their record deal and the rise of their popularity and their eventual fall and all the shenanigans with David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar. It's just a story of the Van Halen brothers in Southern California in the late 60s, 70s. They moved here. They were immigrants. They didn't speak English. Most people don't know this. And they were incredibly poor, but they were musical prodigies. And they started playing backyard parties. They basically invented the backyard kegger. And then across town, there was this rich kid with, huge rock star ambitions and no discernible musical talent named David Lee Roth. And he decided, that he wanted to be in their band, but he auditioned for their band and they said no. They're like, you're fucking terrible. We don't want you in our band. So he started his own band. So through high school, you had these two bands that hated each other. You had the Van Halen band and you had the David Lee Roth band. And they kind of invented the battle of the bands and the backyard kegger. And it was this crazy time. Neither band could forget a record deal. They couldn't get a club gig. So only when they got over their differences, only when they buried the hatchet and realized that they needed each other, were they able to come together and create a band that got the attention of, wait for it, not a record label, but Gene Simmons. And this is totally true. Gene Simmons, the biggest rock star in the world at the time, actually wanted to sign this band, not because he wanted to get them a record deal or he believed in them, but because he wanted to break them up. Because he wanted the Van Halen brothers to be in his solo act. And so you have this wonderful story of it's an immigrant story, but it's also a story about people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, people with different musical styles, learning to compromise, learning to overcome their differences. And only when they do that do they encounter, this third act antagonist that symbolizes everything they want, who is there to destroy them. And just by overcoming that final challenge, did they actually come together as a band and find themselves in a place where they were ready to record an album and become this huge sensation. And my movie ends on the first day they go into the recording studio.
Obviously, he says, I think the Van Halen origin story is compelling, cinematic, and offers key insights about the place and time that birthed the band and its incredible music. He says, as of today, the next potential step is for it to go to film financiers at some point in the future. He says, there may or may not be a movie based on the book. It's exciting to think that there might be, but expectations are best tempered by reality. And he says that because, in Hollywood, you could have an amazing script, an amazing story. You just never know what gets the green light, what gets the financing, what gets the go. But this is good news because, let's be honest, Greg's book is great. Jeff has enthusiasm behind it. If he can get the financing behind it, and Eddie's a legend, this would be unbelievable. Now, you never know. They might make it a movie. They might make it a TV series. But rock docs are hot right now. And movies based on bands and stuff like that are really hot right now. So this could easily get the green light. It's a colorful, interesting story. What do you think, Dave? This would be unbelievable, right?
It would be freaking awesome if it happens.
Oh.
I'm excited it got to this stage.
I can't believe it.
Screenplay.
Yeah.
And, from what I read, he fully intends to take this all the way.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's a lot that can happen.
Yeah.
Between now and getting that movie in the theater. The movie could be all said and done and doesn't go beyond a few screenings somewhere. But I really hope it happens, and I really hope it's a good movie and not like some crap thing.
Let me tell you, I think if anybody does it, forget the theater, because the theater nowadays is like only monstrous, like Marvel shit. I really think a streamer is going to end up grabbing it. So maybe
That
Hulu,
works.
maybe
That works.
Netflix.
As long as it's quality.
Yeah.
I don't care what the platform is that
Right.
I have to watch it on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, isn't Warner Brothers like attached to Max? Something like that. So if Warner Brothers is involved, maybe, they'll put it on Max or something. But there are so many things that are happening. I think there's an Ozzy Osbourne one being made. I know there's a Michael Jackson one being made. There's a Kiss one being made. So Van Halen would fit right in line, and it's really got an interesting story. So also wanted to tell you guys about The Vault. Gene Simmons' vault that contains his recordings with Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen. Remember, we talked about the vault many, many moons ago. And what was he charging, Dave? $2,000 to get a vault, right?
That's right. Right. I wonder if he calls it the Iga Vault.
You know him. He probably is just calling it the money vault.
The Cha-Ching Vault.
The Cha-Ching Vault, exactly. He'll sell you his underpants if he can get money for it. So $2,000, 150 unreleased songs, right? And who the fuck is going to pay that? Well, people did buy it, and they had the vault experience and all this kinds of hoopla. And that was back in 2017. Well, guess what? The vault has been unleashed, this time in a CD set for $79.98. And that is coming out. He also has the Vault CD bundle, $89.98. What does that come with? That is the Vault, which is 11 CDs, plus an action figure and a gold coin. The action figure is, of course, of Gene, because you can't forget Gene. And the Gene Simmons Vault is being sold, the whole big fucking vault, and I mean the vault. It is literally a vault. It is like a big box, and it comes with all the components that are in there. You know, the action figure, there's a book, I think, and there's a coin and all this shit. And that is $499.98, which is a bargain next to $2,000. And if you guys want to check that out, it's at store.rhino.com. So Rhino Records, Dave, is the one who is putting that out. Because you know why? Because Gene wants to squeeze a little bit more juice out of that lemon.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He'll get some buyers that way.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm sure there's a ton of people like, I'm not paying $2,000.
No.
Oh, $80? Like,
11
CDs is that?
11 CDs. 11. It's a bargain.
Like, you know what? I think I'll do it.
Yeah, you see?
So, yeah, the people who spent $2,000 are probably like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
But, you know, it's Gene. I'm not too surprised, quite frankly.
Now, remember, though, the people who paid $2,000 got the vault experience.
I understand that.
Right.
And Gene would come on by to personally deliver it.
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Right. I understand.
Also, wanted to let you guys know that our buddy Steve Rosen, the rock journalist extraordinaire, is putting out the 3rd edition of his book, Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, My 26-Year Journey with Edward Van Halen. It is $41.99 with $12 for shipping within the U.S., European residents can contact Mikkel at vhmikey@gmail.com. Australian residents can contact Adam at adroach1@hotmail.com. And you can also buy it on eBay, Reverb, Etsy, and Amazon. But Steve also sells it from his own website, tonechaserbook.com. So now the 3rd edition has the same text as the first 2 editions, but a lot of typos, grammatical mistakes have been cleaned up for the new edition. It has a new front and back cover, and there are 8 additional pages of photographs, including some rarely seen shots that he pulled out along with some rare memorabilia from his personal archive. And it also comes in its own custom designed shipping box, and early orders can get limited edition guitar picks exclusively designed for the 3rd edition. So if you guys have not gotten Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, My 26-Year Journey with Edward Van Halen by Steve Rosen, this is required reading. For those of you who listen to this podcast, we've had Steve on. He's a great guy, very interesting. Steve was going to write a book on Eddie back in the day, did a lot of interviews, and he put this book together, which is huge. I think it's over 500 pages. He is now in his 3rd edition. This book is doing well. ToneChaserBook.com. If you don't go there, it's on eBay, Reverb, Etsy, and Amazon. So get it today. It is like $50 roughly. You figure $41.99 plus the $12. It's, roughly about $54 or something like that. Definitely worth it. Definitely required reading. Get that out there. What do you think, Dave?
Can't recommend it enough.
That's right. That's right. Also wanted to let you guys know that Edward Van Halen, a musician, which is done by our friend Simon Alkin, has put out part 4 called Before the Breakthrough, and it's the lead up to the band becoming Van Halen. And Ed said in there, for 7 years, no one wanted anything to do with Van Halen, so we took it to the people. Slowly, we built our audience, 3,000 to 5,000 people. Michael Anthony said in there, eventually, someone was about to take notice. and it's basically shows them going from the backyards to the clubs. It is on Icons Remembered on YouTube, and the episode is dedicated to Mark Stone and Eddie Van Halen. Now, interesting thing here, Dave, is at the very end, it says to be continued, which means a part 5 is coming out. So check this out. Our episode that we did with Simon came out in January, and that is definitely something you want to listen to. Edward Van Halen, a musician, part 4. If you haven't seen part 1 through 3, catch up. It's on Icons Remembered on YouTube. What do you think? Did you see part 4?
Yes, I love it. Definitely a very good series so far. Some rare pictures going on there. I'm hoping he continues it because there's always little things I haven't seen before that are brand new in terms of pictures or tidbits of information or things like that. It's really well done, and anybody listening to this podcast, it would be well worth your time to watch them.
Excellent. And we also wanted to let you guys know, as we knew this was coming, my buddy Dave talked about it, and now it's on the horizon. AI Dave, and that is artificial intelligence David Lee Roth, and what do they do with him? They make him sing Sammy Hagar era Van Halen songs. So they just put out Why Can't This Be Love by AI Dave. Here's a clip.
Oh, here it comes. That body feeling again, winding me up inside. Every time we touch. Hey, I don't know. Just tell me where to begin. 'Cause I never ever felt so much. No, I can't reach all. Baby, you know that all. Maybe this doesn't more away. It's not what it takes. So tell me why can this be love? Straight from my heart. Oh, tell me why can this be love?
Now, I thought this was a missed opportunity. First of all, I thought this was the wrong song to put Dave's voice on. I would have put him on maybe Finish What You Started or Pound Cake. I have to say, this could have worked much better. Had they added some Dave yelps, there's certain accents and flares that could have been added to make it more Dave. I don't think the AI doesn't really sound much like Dave. In the beginning, he does a little bit, and then it goes off track. And I didn't think it sounded like Dave at all. So I think they could have made this much more Dave, and they missed an opportunity. I wouldn't have done this song. I think Pound Cake or Finish What You Started would have definitely been a better choice, but I guess they went with the most known Sammy song, at least one of them. So what do you think?
I had the same thought process you did. To me, it sounds like somebody who sounds like Dave singing, but is completely unaware of any voice stylings that Dave does. So like you said, no yelps or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I think they'll get there. No doubt that it will get there. It's here. It's coming. And so now you're going to hear eventually more songs of David Lee Roth singing Sammy era or Sammy Hagar singing David Lee Roth era songs that he didn't sing when he was with the band. It's here.
Yeah.
People are already doing it, and you can expect to hear more soon.
Absolutely. And wrapping up Van Halen news is a cover of Jump by Alex Melton, and it's called If Jump by Van Halen Was Written for Millennials. Now, what the hell does that mean? Well, Alex turned Jump into an acoustic alt-pop indie cover. It's unbelievable. This guy really did a wild job with the song Jump. Here's a clip.
Nothing gets me down. You got it tough. I seen the toughest around. And I know, baby, just how you feel. Yeah, you gotta roll with the punches to get to what course, how you see. Can you see what I mean? Yeah. Might as well show. Might as well show. Go ahead, show. Go ahead, show.
As you can tell, there's no keyboards. It's very chill and laid back. Alex is playing all the instruments, which is just bass, drums, and guitar. There's no keyboards, like I said. The vocal melody is similar but rearranged, and you can still recognize the song. I think it's great. I really enjoy when someone does a cover of a song and really makes it their own, which is really, really cool. The guitar solo is totally different. The drums are different. The bass is different. There's no keys. It's really interesting. He's dressed in like a knit hat with a flannel and a hoodie and jeans. You can tell he's totally like a millennial style. This guy has almost nearly 500,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. And get this, Dave, just today, David Lee Roth himself tweeted this out, which I thought was a great support and great push for the guy by Dave himself. So obviously he approves, and this song is really cool. What did you think?
It is an interesting song. Has an interesting acoustic spin on such a keyboard-oriented song.
Yeah.
And nice that Dave supported him. Dave tends to be pretty supportive that way in the fan community. He's not one of those folks to shut something down right away, which is always nice to see. Yeah, another interesting cover. I don't know if I'm going to listen to it more than once, but it's nice to see people still covering Van Halen songs.
That's true. And that wraps up Van Halen news.
And that's the way it is. Good night.
And we are on to our interview with Derek Fuller, the guitarist for Fan Halen, the biggest Van Halen tribute band out there right now. They just put out a Van Halen tribute album, which is self-titled, playing all different songs from all the six-pack, almost all of them. We talked to him about making that album, as well as touring around the country and overseas. Lots of cool details that he told us about his adventures doing that and what he takes to do this. So that's very, very cool. But before that happens, we got tons of letters to get through. 16, in fact. And that is all coming up next. Take a listen.
I don't think Eddie would ever look me in the eye and shake hands, hugs and kisses. But Alex knows it's all true, and he knows it was all, he knows what happened. He was a bystander who stood by his brother, and I love them both. I still love Eddie Van Halen with all of my heart, and I wish him nothing but good health, but he put me through some miserable stuff that one human being should not do that to another human being.
If you need a dose of VH, get a taste of the closest thing. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band, playing all the hits from the David Lee Roth era, first classic 6 albums, plus deep cuts, some of which have never been played live before by the band. They even throw in popular tracks from the Sammy Hagar era and solo hits. The most viewed Van Halen tribute band on YouTube, Romeo Delight, doing customized recreations of staging, instruments, and costumes from the classic Van Halen era. They even perform entire Van Halen albums in sequence. Romeo Delight plays theaters, casinos, summer indoor and outdoor festivals, and special events. They're also available for private parties. To contact them, call Bud Blanche at 215-704-5144. That's 215-704-5144. Or via email at sonicparade1@yahoo.com. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band. Author Greg Renoff is back with a new book, Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music. The new biography of the record producer Ted Templeman, who went on to produce Van Halen, the Doobie Brothers, Van Morrison, Aerosmith, Sammy Hagar, and more. The book, which runs $19.95, and it's currently available at Amazon.com. From the man who brought you Van Halen Rising comes Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music.
written by Templeman as told to Greg Renoff. Available for only $19.95 at Amazon.com. Order it today.
Check out the new podcast, The Rock Quarry, your place to hear in-depth interviews with some of rock's most colorful characters, with your host, entertainment journalist David J. Criblay. The Rock Quarry is available for free on Spreaker and iTunes. You can check us out on Facebook at The Rock Quarry Podcast, on Twitter at Rock Quarry Pod, on Instagram at The Rock Quarry Podcast, or email us at therockquarrypodcast@gmail.com.
Hi, this is Jim Serger, author of the book Jump. And this is Chris Berger. And we're here with Dave and Dave Unchained. Outstanding.
The long-awaited Van Halen book from legendary rock journalist Steve Rosen is here. Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, my 26-year journey with Edward Van Halen. This is an over 400-page odyssey of Rosen's decades interviewing and being friends with the late guitar god, Eddie Van Halen. Rosen says, I spent 14 long, hard months writing Tone Chaser. It was both the most difficult story I've ever written and the most rewarding. I wanted to be honest and transparent as I possibly could, which was not always an easy thing to do. In the end, this was the most complete and comprehensive book I could have possibly written. There was nothing left to say when I reached the last page. With every word I wrote, I was reminded of the time I spent with Edward, and that hurt terribly. But it also brought back what a remarkable experience that was, and how insanely lucky I had been to have ever known him, and astonishingly to have been friends with him. I hope you can feel everything I felt. That is the purpose of this book. Pre-sales are currently going on now for this self-published book. PayPal Steve directly at scrosen@sbcglobal.net. That's scrosen@sbcglobal.net. It's $47 for those who are buying it inside the U.S., and that includes shipping. $95 for those who are buying it overseas, and that includes shipping. Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, my 26-year journey with Edward Van Halen. Don't miss out. Order it today. Pick up the new book, Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen, by Brad Tolinski and Chris Gill. These music journalists share with fans new and old alike a candid, compulsively readable, and definitive oral history of the most influential rock guitarist since Jimi Hendrix. It is based on more than 50 hours of unreleased interviews they recorded with Eddie Van Halen over the years, most of them conducted at the legendary 5150 Studios at Ed's home in Los Angeles. The heart of Eruption is drawn from these intimate and wide-ranging talks, as well as conversations with family, friends, and colleagues. In addition to discussing his greatest triumphs as a groundbreaking musician, including an unprecedented dive into Van Halen's masterpiece 1984, the book also takes an unflinching look at Edward's early struggles as a young Dutch immigrant unable to speak the English language, which resulted in lifelong issues with social anxiety and substance abuse. Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen, also examines his brilliance, who changed the face of guitar manufacturing. Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen. Get your copy today on Amazon.com. Pick up the new coffee table-sized book, The Decade That Rocked, by legendary rock photographer Mark Weissguy Weiss. This 376-page book has hundreds and hundreds of full-color photos that Weiss shot through the 80s for magazines like Circus, Faces, and Hit Parader, featuring bands like Van Halen, Motley Crue, Twisted Sister, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, and more. There's even behind-the-scenes stories to go with these colorful, eye-popping pictures. The Decade That Rocked, a new book by rock photographer Mark Weiss, is available for purchase now. Go to thedecadethatrocked.com, where there are exclusive bundles available with extra prints, t-shirts, and even patches. Inquire about the Van Halen bundle, especially made for Dave and Dave Unchained listeners. Order today. The Decade That Rocked. It'll rock your world.
I just enjoy playing, period. whether it's by myself or with people or with machines or just in my own mind while I'm going to sleep.
All right, Dave, you know what time it is.
Dave and Dave's mailbag is big and round. Dave says he's tired, can't lift it off the ground. He wants a light bag, likes those the best. And he likes the short mail better than the rest. And he said, well, I think that you're headed for a whole lot of letters. Well, I think that you're headed for a whole lot of letters. Well, I think that you're headed for a boatload of letters. And letter number 1 comes from...
That's right, it's mailbag time again. And we got a Sweet 16 batch of letters, and we're going to get right to it with letter number 1. Coming from Nick D'Angelo, and he says here, it was awesome seeing and talking to Quiet Dave again at the EVH Con in January. I had to laugh about the Quiet nickname again after our conversation because I could hear him loud and clear over the Balance Tour rig replica cranking in the background. Thank you for the shout out on the January edition of the cast. Having Dave take the stage to speak directly after I played Unchained was really cool. And the con, it was so much fun every year, and for Ed heads like myself to come together and pay tribute to our musical hero. Good vibes all around. It's hard to believe that David Lee Roth in Vegas was 4 years ago now, and I wanted to thank you guys for hosting that meetup at Cabo Wabo. What a great time, and I look forward to the next VH Bash. I know that Live Right Here Right Now album was remastered and released on vinyl, and I'm a CD guy, so the Van Halen News Desk website stated that the album will not be reissued on CD. Have you guys heard if the remastered live album tracks will be available to stream? Thanks. Rock on, Nick D'Angelo. Thank you so much, Nick. Well, you know now that you meet Dave that he's not really Quiet Dave. That is all the guys. That is the Clark Kent to his Superman.
That's right. That's right. I don't deny that for a second. That's why you know better than anybody. It's why.
Oh my God!
But it was very cool to see New Jersey Nick.
Yes, of course.
And that was an impressive. That Balance replica rig. Let me tell you, that was an impressive rig because it sounded great and. It definitely was loud.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And so were you. And so were you. So,
yes, that's true.
Well, here's the weird thing, Nick. I have heard nothing about this. Now, this is what I'm wondering, and maybe, Dave, you could shed some light on this. So if someone decides to remaster an album for vinyl, is that specific to vinyl, or can it be used in other formats like streaming or CD? I'm not really sure.
Well, ideally, the mastering for vinyl is different than the mastering for CD. And probably the mixing too. Like, I'm not an engineer because that was the problem with CDs in the early days.
Right.
What they did was they just basically did a copy paste from the vinyl to the CD.
Yeah.
You didn't get the skips and the pops anymore, which
Right.
is great, but there's a different sound aesthetic going on. So you definitely need different mixes. Now, you could be lazy and keep the same mix, but I don't think that's happening. And as far as the live album, I haven't heard anything if it's going to stream or not. Just because they're slapping it on vinyl or even CD doesn't mean they'll stream it. I've got some CDs that have come out in the last few years that were vinyl and CD only, and they're still not streaming. I'd love for it to be streamed. I mean, it's being streamed now, not with the theoretically better sound quality.
Right.
So we can only cross our fingers and hope, but, you know, we'll go back to what we always say. Van Halen has enough trouble keeping the stuff streaming that it should be legitimately released.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to comment on. So, wanted to give you guys a little update as to the mess that Van Halen's streaming situation is. Now, here's the weird thing. It's very inconsistent. If you go on there, you'll see you'll have the Balance Remaster version. This is to stream on Spotify. You'll have the Balance Remastered version and the old old balanced version. Then you have the remastered for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge and the old for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. You can choose either one. Then the remastered OU812 and the old OU812. Now here's where it gets weird. You can only listen to the remastered 5150. There's no old 5150 on there. And when it comes to the 6-pack, you can only listen to the remasters. All the old versions are gone. Now, Van Halen 3 is Van Halen 3. It's never been remastered. It's still sitting there. Same with Tokyo Dome. And as we all know, A Different Kind of Truth is not even there. So Van Halen really needs to clean up their streaming situation. And I hope that Live Right Here, Right Now will be on that, but who knows? I'm not really sure. What do you think about that mix-up, Dave?
Yeah, it is crazy, but I will tell you, I don't subscribe to Spotify. I subscribe to YouTube Music.
Oh, okay.
And I will tell you, everything you say for Spotify is the same on YouTube Music,
Okay,
with the
good to
exception of 5150. Both versions of the albums are there.
Wow, that is interesting.
So even across different platforms, you've got different things going on.
That's true.
So that just makes it even more frustrating. You know, obviously, someone's not quite minding the store. Like, the stuff gets out there, and then when it slips under the radar, it's almost like, too bad, so sad, and that's it. Which, as a fan, if you're streaming, it makes it tough. So I know there's a lot of old school people out there. You, me, and Eddie Trunk Dave, and apparently New Jersey Nick, are, I wouldn't say old school. We're kind of like medium school. We like CDs.
We like CDs. I like iPod. You use an iPod?
Sometimes, but I usually don't. I usually like to hear the music booming from a speaker, so I don't do that too much. But I've definitely signed on to the streaming because it's just so convenient. It's almost like, how can you not?
Of course.
But there's still stuff I play on CD from time to time. But really, certainly in the United States, you know, that format is dying every day, if it's not all but dead already.
Yeah.
But not to stray too far on that. But to your point, it's kind of a mess. But the good news is, at least in the past year or so, they've upgraded the Van Hagar catalog.
Oh, sure, yeah.
They're getting it out there in at least some formats. So all is not lost. I mean, that's progress. Certainly better than where we were about a year ago.
It's just weird that you go through all those hoops to remaster all those albums, and you don't take the last step to put on the live album. It's just sort of weird that they don't do that. But
I think they also like to space it out. Like, they really try and get the most they can from physical media, because they know there's always a certain amount of people who are going to buy vinyl, especially if it's an upgrade and you can't get it in any format. And then after that cycle is passed and they've milked it for all it's worth, then you go, okay, well, then maybe we'll put it out on CD. Or since not too many people buy it on CD, we'll stream it and put it out on CD at the same time. Because I'm sure they make a lot more money from physical media than they are from streaming.
Oh, sure. Of course. So, letter number 2 comes from Johnny Booth from Fredericksburg, Virginia. And Johnny says, a while back there was a question, what's a Frankenstein versus a Frankenstrat? My opinion, what Ed built is Frankenstein, and the guitars that were manufactured in its image are Frankenstrats. Number 2, I told you about Hot for Pizza in Richmond, Virginia a while back. It's an hour south of my home, and I finally got there recently. It's awesome. Great food, great drinks, and really, what a cool neighborhood hole-in-the-wall sort of place. The only criticism I have is they don't play any Van Halen. Thanks, and stay frosty. Johnny Booth from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Well, Johnny, I went to the source. So I went to speak to Chris Gill to confirm this, and he said, you're correct, sir. What Ed built is Frankenstein, and the guitars that were manufactured in its image are Frankenstrats. And that comes from Chris Gill from Guitar World, who also co-authored Eruption, the book on Ed, which is fantastic, and he specifically did all the guitar stuff in that book, which is great. So he's the man to know about that for sure. Regarding Hot for Pizza in Richmond, Virginia, I'd love to check that place out, although I'm not down there too much. The fact that they're not playing Van Halen music is a crime. Why aren't they going with the theme? I'm not really sure, but they definitely should be doing that. Maybe you caught them on an off night, or maybe they had the radio on or something, but one thing I love is when a place like that really makes it their own. I had a deli, it was near my mom's house, called Grateful Deli, and the owner really loved the Grateful Dead, so everything in the deli was Grateful Dead. So it was Grateful Dead posters all over the place. They had sandwiches named after songs. It was really cool, but but they should definitely do that at Hot for Pizza. So he said they had great food and great drinks, and I would imagine it's a great place, but little Van Halen music could make it even better. What do you think, Dave?
I'll never say no to more Van Halen music, that's for sure.
That's for sure, yeah.
And next time you talk to Chris Gill, tell him I say hello, because I met him in person.
That's right.
At EVHCon. So very cool guy.
Yeah.
Super knowledgeable. So glad you went to him, the source. And Johnny Booth, I was just I guess it was a few weeks ago, I was catching up on some of your Van Halen videos on YouTube.
Okay, cool.
So always very entertaining and informative, sir. So thank you for flying the flag like we do. And Dave, I think we may have to have a road trip down to Richmond, Virginia one day.
Maybe we could broadcast from there.
I think I feel a VH bash coming back. Back on.
Down to Virginia, right? Going
down to Virginia.
We'll call it Going Down with Dave and Dave. Letter number 3 comes from L. Gent. He says, I saw the comment from a Van Halen fan. Is it true that when it comes to David Lee Roth solo albums, he needed a ton of songwriters for each song? He wasn't that talented then, was he? Pete Angelus was the talent behind the videos. Michael McDonald was the writer behind I'll Wait, and that's why David Lee Roth liked cover tunes, because he didn't have the ability to write songs completely by himself. Not one single one is written in its entirety by himself on the solo albums. L. Gent. All right, a little bitter there. But yeah, you know what? Listen, here's the thing. Let's get something straight. David Lee Roth has always been a collaborator when it comes to writing songs. That is the way he wrote in Van Halen. It's the way he wrote as a solo artist when he first came out as a solo artist. Yes, he did the cover EP, sure. Then he collaborated with Steve Vai. And then he wrote with Brett Tuggle as well. And then he had a whole bunch of different people that he wrote with, but his talent is entertaining, singing in a stylized voice, and really putting on great live shows, high energy, writing lyrics and song melodies. That's what Dave does. He never hid that. He never walked around like he was the shit. Everybody knew Edward was the shit, for sure. But Dave always knew what he did and what he did well. Now, here's the thing. Dave also never walked around saying he was the greatest singer. Now, you look at Sam. Sam's a really good singer. He's a better voice than Dave. I've mentioned this before. Dave is kind of like Ozzy or Vince Neil. They have a stylized rock voice. And you look at the guys who replaced Dave and Vince Neil and Ozzy, which is Ronnie James Dio and Sammy Hagar and John Corabi. All those guys are big singers, big voices. Vince Neil, Ozzy, and Dave have a lot in common because they're stylized voices. Great for rock. They're not fantastic, but they're great for what they do. Mick Jagger's like that too. So, you know what? That is what Dave does. He's good for catchy lyrics, cool melodies, things like that. Another big talent that he had was he commercialized Van Halen. He made Van Halen more digestible for the listening audience. If Dave never built that stage for Ed and Al, they wouldn't be as big as they were. That's for sure. And that's not taking away from Ed and Al's talent. He knew that those guys were the musical talent. He was no dope. He saw the musical talent in those guys and said, you know what? If I put my peanut butter with their chocolate, we can make a nice Reese's. So that was his talent. What do you think?
I think you're hungry tonight, is what I think.
It's that hot for pizza getting me going.
There you go. There you go. As far as songwriting goes, Dave has always been the lyricist. That hasn't been a secret. He does have to co-write with other people. That's not a crime, by the way.
No.
Because a lot of people are either lyricists or they're the music part of the equation. I mean, look at Elton John. He's the music part of the equation.
Sure.
He very rarely, if ever, writes lyrics to a song. That's Bernie Taupin and others. But no one's going to Elton and say, hey, you're a talentless hack.
No.
I mean, that's just not happening. So, yeah, Dave always partners up a lot. I'd even go on a limb because I don't have the songwriting credits in front of me. But most of his songwriting credits are just him and somebody else. Now, admittedly, sometimes there are some group credits.
A Little Ain't Enough has a little more. Like, for example, that one has a lot. On Filthy Little Mouth, it's kind of him and Terry for the most part.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So as time goes on, there were some more group writing efforts. I think there was at least one song with both Bissonette brothers, for example.
Yes, that's true.
I don't think he ever co-wrote with Billy Sheehan that I remember.
I thought it was like one or two songs that Billy was on on it with Steve, no? Am I wrong?
I think the only song Billy ever got songwriting credit for was Shy Boy.
Which was his song, basically.
Right.
His cover.
And Dave got an arrangement credit on that,
okay.
which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of like roll your eyes when you see
That's
that.
a Tallis classic.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, Dave would write with Steve Vai, or he'd write with Terry Kilgore.
John Five.
Jason
Becker.
A little late enough, he co-wrote with Jason Becker.
Right.
So that's usually his go-to move, is
Right.
get some music and put some lyrics to it. There was the point where he was definitely going out to some outside songwriters and looking for some good songs. And some of those songs had more than one. But hey, I mean, no problem. If the guy's looking for quality songs and that's how he has to do it, then that's how he has to do it. Does Dave like a cover song? Oh, yeah. That's no big secret.
No.
I think his last solo album, which, good Lord, is like 21 years old, I think, already, is mostly covers. And sometimes that's just how Dave rolls.
That's right. Letter number 4 comes from Big Bad Bill from Boston. He says, I was just looking at a set list from Van Halen shows from Boston Garden 1981 and noticed something interesting. 3 out of the first 4 songs, not counting Al's drum solo, were brand new off of Fair Warning. What balls this band had to lead with such new material, especially when the album wasn't selling well as the others. Were other tours so heavy on new songs? Big Bad Bill from Boston. Well, Big Bad Bill, thank you for writing in. Well, listen, the Fair Warning tour was incredible, for sure. Listen to this set list from July 25th, 1981, from the Boston Garden. On Fire, Sinner Swing, drum solo, Hear About It Later, So This Is Love, Jamie's Crying, bass solo, Running with the Devil, Dance the Night Away, Sunday Afternoon in the Park, Romeo Delight, Everybody Wants Some, Ice Cream Man, Mean Street, guitar solo, Feel Your Love Tonight, You Really Got Me, then the encores of Unchained and Ain't Talking About Love. That is a kick-ass set list, and the reason why they have such balls is their material off of Fair Warning was incredible. It was really strong, and I don't give a shit how much it sold. That stuff is incredible. Sinner Swing, Hear About It Later, So This Is Love, those songs should be right up there with Panama, Ain't Talking About Love, and all the other Van Halen classics as far as I'm concerned. Mean Street, Unchained, these are unbelievable. I've even come to love Push Comes to Shove after Dweezil Zappa really schooled me on it from his podcast, Running with the Dweezil, about the incredible guitar that Ed did on there. Really, really cool. But you know what? Even One Foot Out the Door I like, although it's too short. I wish they kind of fleshed it out. But I don't understand why those songs aren't considered Van Halen classics. The only thing I'm thinking is, you know, the expression timing is everything in life, right? I think there was a little bit of a changeover going on in 81, and the timing was tough because they're coming out of the rock 70s, and punk was getting big, and also, you know, new wave, and they were transferring into the 80s, and maybe that sound was a little too 70s going into the 80s with all that old rock stuff, and maybe that wasn't flying as well, because 81 is when things started changing, and they really didn't get into that hard rock heavy metal thing until like 83. So I'm wondering if the tide was turning at the time, but I love that Van Halen didn't give a shit. On other tours, yeah, in 1984 they played 6 songs off the new album, and you gotta remember, those are classics now, but they were brand new at the time. You know, they were playing Girl Gone Bad and House of Pain on top of the 4 that we know, Jump Panama, Hot for Teacher, and I'll Wait, you know. But those songs weren't classics back then. This is when they started the tour. They were right out with 6 songs. So, you know, listen, they were out to promote an album. That's why they were there. So they were happy to do that. They did plenty of new songs off the Diver Down album on that tour, too. So that's to be commended. What do you think, Dave?
Van Halen never shied away from doing new songs. And I think when you're a younger band and you don't have as big a catalog and people aren't used to the hits yet, you can get away with that. You can come running out the gate doing a whole bunch of new songs early in the set. As time goes on, it gets harder. I remember one time Paul McCartney opened up a set with a new song from his then current album. And everybody was like, oh, You know, they were like, oh my God, that's such a bold move, because the guy's got hits out the wazoo from the Beatles in his solo career. He doesn't need to open with a basically unknown song, but he did. And as you pointed out, Van Halen was never afraid to put a bunch of songs in the set list from the current album, and especially when they were with Sam. I mean, their 86 tour had every song off of 5150 except for one. The For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tour had almost every song off that album except for one or two.
Yeah.
So they definitely loaded it on.
Yeah.
And you know what? More power to them. Because if you're a really big fan of the band, you don't want to hear the same old, same old. You want to hear a different show than you saw last time. And Van Halen definitely delivered that. They were not afraid to do new songs.
And the thing is that back then, that was the whole point of the tour. The whole point of the tour was to sell the album, to go out and say, hey, we got a new album. Hey, we got new songs. These are our new songs. People keep thinking about now. Nowadays, an album, it doesn't matter. Like, a tour is more important than the album now.
Now the album advertises the tour, but back in the day it was the opposite. The tour advertised the album.
Right. And nowadays, if they play one new song from the new album, then it's like, oh, okay. It's so funny. I was just listening to the new Ace Frehley album, which I'm enjoying, and I was listening to some hardcore Kiss fans on a podcast. They were like, yeah, he's not doing these in concert. It's like, wait, what? He has all these cool new songs, and he's not playing them in concert. And it's like, wait a minute. And he's playing, like, all these old Kiss songs, and I'm not even talking about his Kiss songs. He's playing even, like, Paul Stanley Kiss songs. And it's almost like, can we, like, hear some Ace material? Like, if you go to see Ace in concert, you want to see Ace in concert? It'd be great if he plays some Ace Kiss songs. That's great. But don't start singing, like, Detroit Rock City. Like, what are you doing? Like, play some Ace songs.
That's interesting. He's definitely playing to, like, lower common denominator Kiss fans.
Yes. And people are like, what about, like, you know, all the different new songs, like 10,000 Volts or Cherry Medicine and, like, all these cool Ace songs. Like, he's not doing it. I was like, what are you doing, dude?
I think because most fans that are going aren't listening to that.
I know, but it's upsetting because a lot of the hardcore.
Oh, no, it is. I totally agree. Yeah. Well, remember when we saw Sammy on the Crazy Times tour?
Oh, my God.
And that was before the Crazy Times album even came out, and he wasn't playing anything. And then 2 weeks after the tour ended, the album came out, and we were like, dude, really?
Ass backwards. And he had the Crazy Times banners everywhere.
Yes.
Out of his mind.
Yes.
Letter number 5 comes from Greg Miner, and he says, happy birthday to older, quieter Dave and younger, louder Dave. Let's get something straight. Dave is not older than me. He is definitely the same age. We are 3 days apart. Number 1.
Technically, I am older by 3 days.
By 3 days. But, I mean, come on. Anyway, hearing you talk about how you discovered Van Halen got me thinking about how I discovered them. My mom bought me a tape recorder for Christmas in 1983 and got me one of those K-Tel mixtapes called Blast Off. It had Dancing in the Streets on it, so that was the first Van Halen song I ever heard. And I loved the solo so much I wanted to hear more from the band's music. Do you remember the Columbia House Club when we got all those tapes for a penny? When you have to buy a few more at elevated prices? Well, I quickly went through my Van Halen catalog, starting with Diver Down, and I caught up in time for 1984 for when it came out, and I remember picking berries on a nearby farm. On my best day, I made $14. It was enough to buy the new album, and I had to wait until a friend of mine went into town and he could buy it from me. And so I didn't get 1984 until mid-year, and I nearly wore that cassette out that summer, and I've been a diehard fan ever since. I just wanted to share my experience becoming a Van Halen fan. Keep up the good work on your amazing podcast, Greg Miner. Well, Greg, you know, it's so funny. You really took me back with those K-Tel cassettes. I used to love those mixtapes. If anybody remembers, they were like now this is what I call whatever music country, this is what I call disco. They have those tapes now, but the K-Tel ones were cool. They were different ones. They had Full Tilt, Disco Nights, Night Flight. This one was called Blast Off, and I looked this up. This was the mixtape that he had. It was You Should Hear How He Talks About You by Melissa Manchester, mixed with The Other Woman by Ray Parker Jr., Hot in the City by Billy Idol, You Keep Me Running Away by 38 Special, Dancing in the Street by Van Halen, Hurt So Good by John Cougar, You Don't Want Me Anymore by Steel Breeze, Paper Late by Genesis, Play the Game Tonight by Kansas, Holdin' On by Tane Kane, Love Plus One by Haircut 100, Crimson and Clover by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, and I Ran So Far Away by Flock of Seagulls. So I used to buy those at Corvettes, Dave, if you can believe that.
Corvettes, good gravy. Wow. But that's quite an eclectic mix of songs.
It really is. It really is. But back then, that's what Top 40 was like. It was a mixed bag. You really had rock thrown in with disco, thrown in with pop, thrown in with R&B. It was all over the place. Now, in regards to Columbia House, let me tell you something. I look both ways when I step out of my house because I keep thinking the Columbia House people are going to come after me because I have banged that company for so many free albums. It's not even funny. I became a master at it after a while. I used to get boxes and boxes of free Columbia albums. And to be honest with you, though, I never felt bad about it. I'll tell you why. Because what I learned from a record company executive is that those CDs and tapes that you got from Columbia House were less lower grade quality CDs and tapes than what were sold in the stores. They were like...
Yes, because they had their own printing plants, if I'm remembering correctly.
And they were absolute shit. And they were the lowest quality ever, and that was crazy. But I loved your story about the picking the berries to buy the 1984 album, because I think that's really important. You know, you never forget that shit when you save up your money to buy an album, and, you know, you remember it because you had to go out there and you had to dig in the dirt and pick those berries, and you never forget that album because for the rest of your life you were on your hands and knees picking those berries, thinking about how you got that album, so you remember that. Nowadays, these kids, they can stream whatever album they want. They don't really appreciate it. But you really know when you do stuff like that. So that was cool to hear. What do you think, Dave?
I think I only used Columbia House once. I got my 9 free cassettes or whatever, and then I canceled. Actually, Dave, weren't we using multiple names?
Yes. In college, we got completely and totally out of control.
Now it's coming back to me. Yes.
And I remember it got to high levels. I mean, I thought this was the coolest thing. I'm getting a box of albums like every 6 weeks or something. So I was stacking up my whole audio library left and right. But then I started getting creditors calling my house. And the weird part is that my dad got on the phone and told them that he's going to sue them because you have a illegal contract with a minor or something like that. It was so funny. And he's like, stop doing that shit. So I had to stop doing it. But then, if I remember, I picked it up again in college and we started doing it in college.
I remember that. And yeah, then you get the one, you have to mail them back. Oh, man. But yeah, I remember there was at least one record store that they would sell Columbia House records or CDs or whatever, like for $1 cheaper than anything else they would sell.
I think that was Mr. Cheapo.
Because they were lower quality.
They totally are. In fact, they would tell you, they would explain the whole thing to you. In fact, I've had the guys at the record store take them out in front of me and put them side by side. And he would even show me, like, the printing is even less quality. Everything. If you remember, the tapes had the little red lines on the side. They really indicated that they were not, even the artwork was affected. Everything was affected. Letter number 6 comes from Dave from Brazil, who I guess his real name is Fique Gelato. He's from Brazil, this guy. So he says here, I discovered the Mighty Van Halen when I saw the 3 videos from the 1981 Oakland shows that really captured the magnitude of the band and set me on a Van Halen journey that has never stopped. As a 14-year-old young punk full of spunk, I was enthralled by a young blonde woman that appeared about 52 seconds into the Hear About It Later video, right after Dave sings House on a Hill. What is her name? What does she look like today? Maybe it's better that we keep it as a memory. Thanks for the great job. And he says, going back to an issue on your pronunciation, the Extreme album, Saudades, D-Rock, which we like to call Sausage D-Rock, is the pronunciation of the word. It's Saudades. Saudades. There is no exact translation of the word, but it means longing or missing. I guess Quiet Dave may prefer the sausage translation. Stay frosty, Dave from Brazil, Fique Gelato. Well, let me tell you something. Yeah, it's great to hear that you're writing us in from Brazil. It's nice that we know we reached that far. The girl in the Hear About It Later video, she's a beautiful woman. You know, I'm sure she looks great today. I hope so. But, you know, it's so funny that you picked that up. It's very quick. And it is a very close-up. It's weird. It's kind of weird. But it's better to keep her in your memories, I guess. In terms of the Extreme album, you know, I just feel like I never understand when a band just puts out a complicated album title. It just doesn't help sell it. You put out a shitty album cover with a shitty title. It's not going to help you. It's just not going to help you. And they were away so long, and then they come out with an album you can't even pronounce. That was stupid. I thought the album was sort of lackluster. There were some good songs on there, but I didn't like the production on it, and I thought it was kind of a lame effort after all those years of waiting. If you want a good Extreme album, try 6, the new one. That's really fantastic. fantastic. What do you think, Dave?
Agreed. I agree with you on 6. That is an album worth listening to.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And I'm surprised you talked more about the girl than you did about Sausage.
Here's the thing. We beat that to death. I'd like to joke around because Dave and I like to say the sausage word all the time. I got so frustrated with that, I just started calling it Sausage D-Rock because I think it's funnier, to be honest with you. And I bet you anything, if we ever got Gary on this podcast and I mentioned that to him, he'd laugh because, number one, he's Italian. Number two, I think Nuno named the goddamn album, so he's probably pissed off.
No, absolutely, because isn't he part
Portuguese, right?
Portuguese, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's a Portuguese
right,
term.
from Brazil. Right, exactly.
Okay.
Letter number 7 comes from Sage Jess. And Sage says, I was listening to the Bob Lefsetz podcast, and he had a guest, Peter Frampton, on there. And he was recounting his visit with Eddie in the studio. And according to Peter, the thing that blew his mind was when Ed picked up the guitar and played him a Van Halen number they were in the process of recording. Ed then tells Peter that this particular tune was inspired by a Frampton song. And Ed said that he essentially took a Frampton song and played it backwards. That's what he did to put out this Van Halen song. He didn't note what the Van Halen song was. And he also wanted to note that he says, I wanted to give you guys a heads up about a Van Halen box set. 8 CDs that I purchased from Amazon a few months ago. Although I've only owned a few bootleg records over the years, I was very pleased with this one over anything I've had in the past. I'm far from an expert on rare recordings and boots, but this is definitely worthy of a listen. And he sent us a link and he says, thanks for the great pods, keep them coming. Sage Jess. Sage, thank you so much for writing in. We appreciate that. The Bob Lefsetz podcast is very good. Sometimes he has some rockers on there, and he does a great job interviewing them. Apparently, the Van Halen song is based on the Frampton song, Nowhere Is Too Far From My Baby. And here's a clip of that song.
I'm crossing my fingers, I'm touching my toes, I'm hoping this feeling will go. I know I can make it, but will I mistake it when I can find peace of mind?
Now, he doesn't mention the Van Halen song that it inspired, but I'm wondering if you guys can help us out. So apparently, this is the riff. This is the riff, backwards. If anybody knows, let us know which Van Halen song you think it inspired.
I personally think that it's Black and Blue from OU812.
And he said that Ed decided to reverse it and use it for his song. That's kind of neat. And I do want to say, everybody hope that Peter Frampton gets into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year, along with Ozzy and Foreigner. These guys, they're older guys. They're not going to be around for much longer. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but they're older and they're not all well. And they all really need to get in, especially Peter. So that is very, very important. Also, in regarding the Amazon box set, if you look on Amazon, you can get some wild deals on there, and I'll tell you why. They have these CD box sets on there that are radio broadcast recordings, and let me tell you something, they're fucking good, and they're cheap. They're like $30, $20. This one here's 8 CDs. It was like less than $30. He sent us a link, although I think it's sold in the UK, though. That's the thing about it. But really, really cool. Mixed Sammy and Dave years. This one had, I think, some from the 2004 tour, along with some other different tours that were on there. Some of the really old ones with Dave. So really cool stuff on there. There's tons of them out there. You just got to really search for them. But they're like radio broadcast recordings. Have you seen these, Dave?
Yeah, so apparently bootlegs are legal now, or at least some of them are.
Right.
Because I think it's something like if it was broadcast on the radio and it's older than 25 years.
Right, it's like free
fair
reign.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't, trademark it or whatever the right word is. I'm obviously using the wrong terminology.
Right.
And I think that's kind of sort of tried to filter to the United States, but I don't think that law is the same in the States. But it's definitely a thing in Britain. So that's why you see that box set for example, on the UK Amazon website, and they haven't taken it down because it fits into the parameters. Now, sometimes what they try and do is they try and say, oh, this was a radio show, and it wasn't a radio show at all. It's a straight-up bootleg from the audience or even a soundboard that was never broadcast, and they try and get away with it that way. They usually do because, no one's following closely what's what, so they'll get away with it. But it's interesting now that it's out there, and that's probably one of the few things keeping the CD market alive.
I know.
Is these kind of, I'll still call them bootlegs, but these live radio shows.
But you know what? Sometimes you hear the station IDs on there, too. You can hear the DJs talking on there, too.
Oh, yeah, no, it's cool stuff. I mean, a lot of them are genuine radio shows. Like, a lot of those shows, especially here in the States, were broadcast back in the day on Redbeard, all those live shows. And they would put out those records and send them off to all the radio stations, and the radio stations would keep them or get rid of them. And then you could go to record shows and buy them. I mean, they were very limited pressing.
Yeah, and then there's commercials in there, too, sometimes.
Right. Oh, yeah. So they tended to be expensive, but they were a genuine live show mixed for radio. So if your band didn't have a live album, you had to go hunting. But this was a way to get it.
Right, for sure. Letter number 8 comes from Dan Ninen. He says, maybe this question was already addressed on your podcast, but what if Eddie had stayed with the drums and Alex stayed with the guitar instead of them trading? What would Alex would have come up with on guitar? Would he have been a typical run-of-the-mill guitar player? Would he have come up with what Eddie did, or something completely different, or even more insane? He obviously wouldn't have written the same songs, but would he have written great music? And would Ed have been one of the greatest drummers of all time? Sorry I missed you at the Van Halen convention. I was out of town this year, but far more people in previous years. I think the weather didn't help. Dan Ninen. So there we go. Well, Dan, I have to be honest with you. I think the combination of Ed on drums and Alex on guitars goes absolutely nowhere. I think they would have remained in the garage, and I don't think they would have clicked and became what they became, because it's not like Eddie's drumming is the greatest drumming of all time. He could certainly drum to keep a beat, but it's not like he's an unbelievable drummer. He's clearly a guitarist and keyboardist for sure. And I don't know what Alex does on guitar. I've never heard him play guitar, but I can't imagine they would ever reach the heights that they did. What do you think, Dave?
Oh, I totally agree with you. We never would have heard of them at all.
Yeah. Letter number 9 comes from John Citrone. Oh, wait. Okay.
He gave it to you.
I know. I'm reading it.
Come on.
All right. It looks like Citrone. Okay. Citrone.
Oh, my God. What kind of Italian are you?
Because I'm looking at the pronounce, and it says Citrone, and I look at it, it says Citrone.
I'm embarrassed for you.
I apologize. For all my ancestors, I apologize. Okay, letter number 9. It says here, I am here to finally put to rest the Hot for Teacher intro controversy, much as I am sure to the chagrin of Quiet Dave. First, a quick music lesson. The pattern Alex plays at the beginning of Hot for Teacher is called a herda. It's a combination of strokes based in a triplet, but can be organized in a number of ways. Alex was only one of many rock drummers to employ this technique in his fills. In the opening second, yes, literally, the first second of the drum solo intro, you can clearly hear Alex clicking his sticks together. That happens only once, but now that I've heard it, I will never not hear it again. I have checked different recordings on different audio sources, and it is there, clear as the blue sky if you are listening to it. Any drummer will notice that this is wood smacking together during this very difficult pattern to play accurately at the speed, especially if your hands are crossing your body to play on the floor toms, which for Al is to his far right. This is not a digital flaw or some sort of post-mix artifact. This is a real-time flub on Al's part during an execution of the rudiment. Maybe they were so enamored with the performance, which is otherwise pristine and frankly legendary, that they decided to keep it. To clarify and for accuracy for the hardcores, Alex is playing that pattern on Simmons electronic pads, technically not his floor toms. The actual acoustic tom-toms come in as an overdub after the herda pattern is concluded. It's small but important detail to those sticklers who will be writing to tell you that those are not the floor toms. John Citrone from
Citrone.
Well, let me tell you something. Do people call you Marconi or Marcone?
It's right in front of you.
All right, Citroni.
Sober up. Sober up.
Sober up, sober up. All right, so listen, John Citroni, you're right, Citroni, and Dave's sensitive to this because people call you Marcone, right?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Oh, there you go. So that pisses you off, and obviously this is pressing on a bruise. So, so listen, yes, John, this is a long, long discussed subject. I understand your point about the click and the sticks, and yes, I understand it. It makes sense, and I personally don't think it's the Lamborghini like Ted said in his book, and I'm not saying Greg reported it wrong. I think Greg reported exactly what Ted said, but I think Ted's confusing the Lamborghini with Panama, to be honest with you. And I think it was the Simmons drums and it was the stick click is in there. I heard it. So here's the click right here. So what do you think, Dave? Another theory on this. What do you think?
And yet another piece of the puzzle that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So no matter how many times we put the baby to bed, just wakes up crying for more.
That's right. Letter number 10 comes from your brother from another mother, Dave, Simiak Solo Jew from Tehran, Iran, and he won't stop. He says here, apparently Warner Brothers has claimed that Dave's new Van Halen live singles like Panama, Ain't Talk About Love, Dance the Night Away have all been removed, at least in Apple Music, which makes sense since the artist is only David Lee Roth and the royalty only goes to him. Always a money issue, don't you think? Number 2, I was re-listening to your whole podcast, and one of the Dave interviews before Eddie's death, he claimed that he came up with Eddie's guitar pattern and some of the solos from the first album. I'm with him in this case. It's not hard to tell someone to play something just like we can play solos with our mouth during listening to music. Otherwise, it can be done. I think Roth may be right. What do you think about Alex's book rumors? Simiak Soloju from Tehran, Iran. Let me tell you something, Simiak. I don't know what the hell Dave is talking about. Let's start with the royalty situation. Listen, any royalties, if there were any, not that there's going to be much, because most of these things were streaming. There's a couple of things on iTunes, but they would go to all of the songwriters. Dave just doesn't get the royalties just because it's released as David Lee Roth. The songwriters will get the royalties, so Wolf will get Ed's share, and Al will get his share, and all of that stuff. There's no way Dave's just taking all the royalties for himself. That doesn't happen. I think that they took them down because they don't want Dave using those songs in commercials. I think that is the danger there. If someone,
Bingo.
Yeah, I think that's the danger there. They don't want that happening. If someone wants a Van Halen song for a commercial, they're going to Van Halen. They're not using Dave's version of Jump, which I'm sure would be cheaper and quicker. Now, also, in terms of Dave...
Which is how you like it.
Oh, yeah, cheap and quick, you know me. And regarding Dave coming up with Ed's solos and his guitar pattern, I don't know what to say about that. I think Dave's getting a little nutty. I think he's been in that house too long. I think he needs to get out on tour or do something. It's so sad, to be honest with you, to hear these things, especially with Ed gone. But even when Dave was saying them and Ed was sick, it's just not cool that he says those things. And let's be honest, Ed is the one who comes up with the solos. I don't think Dave's coming up with those solos, you know.
No, right. I mean, listen, did Dave ever say, hey, you know what would be nice for solo if you did da 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 da, right? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, did any of that stuff kind of happen?
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. But the way Dave made it sound is like, I wrote that solo. Yeah. And that's like Ed saying, I wrote the lyrics to Ain't Talking About Love. Neither of those things happened. I think Dave just started getting a little too greedy with who is being credited for what in the band. And it was almost like Dave was like, I had my hand in everything. And no, I mean, Dave, it's okay that you didn't have your hand in everything. That's why you're in a band, because some people are good at some things and other people are good at other things, and the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what makes great bands great. And like you said, Dave, like, don't start getting picayune about this stuff now, late in the game. You're going to start taking credit for this stuff when your bandmate is on their deathbed or after that?
He's counting beans. He's really counting beans, and I'll tell you what pissed him off is Ed not only owns the name Van Halen. Oh, now it's Wolf, but did he own the band and the band name? But he created EVH brand, which is obviously branded by the stripes, the guitar, guitars, all that stuff. He created his own industry. Dave can't do that. Ed had that whole other business aside from the band of the guitars and his brand and making straps and guitars and everything. And that pissed him off, to be honest with you. And you know why? If you read the interviews Dave did when he was promoting his tattoo cream, he was saying, I put too much of my blood, sweat, and tears behind a name that I didn't own. And now I'm doing it with ink, the original, and all that kinds of shit. That was all stemming from that. Now, you wanted to know about what our thoughts are about the Alex book rumors. I personally think the book is going to be way more focused on the relationship between Ed and Al. I don't know how much of the band drama is going to be in there. I'm very curious to see what happens with this. I don't know. Alex is so quiet. I'm very curious to see what he's going to put in there, but we'll see what happens. What do you think?
I think, like a lot of biographies, it depends what they were thinking about and what they remember now as the most important time. And a lot of times when people read these biographies, they want to know, oh, well, how did you write this song? What were you guys doing in the studio at the time? And then that doesn't become the focus of the book. Like someone will talk about, yeah, we worked on this album and that's like half a page. And then they spend the next 20 pages talking about the trials and tribulations with friends, marriages, alcohol, whatever vice they had that week. And you're kind of like, oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't even know that was going on. But that's not really what I want to read about. So it'll be interesting to see what Alex remembers. I don't think he's going to be doing any deep dives into drumming patterns, because even if he did, the publisher is going to be like, Al, nobody wants to read that. There's going to be like 10 people who want to read that. The general public is not going to want to know your drum setup. So maybe put a little of that in there, but I'm going to guess that a large focus will be his relationship with Ed, their relationship in the band together with their bandmates. He will probably take advantage of the pulpit he has with the book and dispel certain rumors or positions that maybe others in the band have taken. And I was just listening to a lot of the interviews that Steve Rosen did with Al. There were quite a few interesting things that were said there. So if the book is at that level and Alex remembers everything now that he told Steve Rosen way back then, I think there's going to be some interesting perspectives, because Al's the kind of guy that just tells it the way it is. It's not out there to hurt or be mean with everybody, but he's just pretty straightforward. So I am definitely looking forward to that book later this year.
Absolutely. Letter number 11 comes from Tampa Tony from Las Vegas. He says, well, guys, it's been a hot minute since I've written in, but that doesn't mean I haven't been listening to every minute every month, and I'm always excited to listen to the podcast at the end of each month for a new episode. And he wanted to ask us, I just can't understand how a killer box set cannot be compiled over the next few years in celebration of Ed's life. Okay, no tribute concert from the Van Halen camp, but I bet a nice compilation of Ed's instrumentals and leftovers from each era would make a really nice celebration of his life. I'm sure there is enough material to put something out to quench the fans' thirst for anything new from Van Halen. Come on, Al, give us a break. Help us fans keep Van Halen flag furling. Happy belated New Year to both of you, Tampa Tony from Las Vegas. It's been a while since we heard from Tampa Tony. Thanks for writing in. And yes, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Tony, because I thought about this, and you know what? To be honest, it would probably be the easiest thing to do, because you wouldn't have to fight with all the other members about what to put on, who's got what say. Now, the thing is, obviously, it's in the hands of Wolf and Al, and Wolf doesn't want to do this because he said his father put out everything he wanted to put out, and everything left over is left over, and he didn't want to put it out, so he didn't. But you know what really would be cool is if you guys remember what they did in the 90s with the Beatles anthologies, and it was sort of like, you know, George Martin, which is the original Beatles producer, went back in and kind of like reconnected all these different pieces of Beatles music together in a swirling kind of interesting fashion. imagine that would probably make sense here for Eddie. That would be great. You could almost do like a series of Eddie Van Halen solo albums that way, and it would really keep the other guys out and stop the fighting. But here's the thing. Wolf is too busy writing albums and having his own career, and I understand that. It makes sense because that's what he wants to do, and you can't stop him from doing that. But maybe if you had somebody like Matt Bruck or, some other people that are close to Ed that could do something like this, that would make sense. But you need to have someone to really get behind it. Al and Wolf would have to be supporting it, but you need a team to do this. Now, Steve Vai really feeds his fans. He loves going into his archives. He'll make new albums, but then also do an archival album, and he keeps going back and forth, giving you archives, giving you a new album. It's different. He's alive and well and heavily engaged in his material. So, yeah, that would be great. But the problem is that, you have to have someone who's willing to do it. But that could definitely be something that would be interesting. Don't you think, Dave?
It would be phenomenally interesting.
Yeah.
But the band is just not interested in doing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not on their radar.
Yeah.
They can't be bothered.
Yeah.
They won't hire somebody to do it. Like, get Don Landy to do it. Everyone likes Don. Everyone agrees. Just have Don do it. But for some reason, they've just never been that kind of band. And it feels like they're the only major band who won't do it.
Yeah.
So if they just want their stuff rotting away, have at it. But, to be blunt, it's an easy way to make a buck. It's an easy way to please your fans. It's not easy. There's some work involved with it. But, if every other major band in the world is doing it, there's got to be something to it. The music always mattered, so go into the archives and release the music.
Absolutely. For example, we talked about Chris Gill earlier in the conversation. He would be a perfect guy to be on a team with these recordings because he was close to Ed, he knew his recordings, and, it would make sense to see what would be interesting to put together. But you know what I mean? The Beatles anthology, the way that was
totally.
That was
like a
little
unique flavor thing of everything.
It was like he sewed all these pieces together and made it cohesive so that it was like a digestible, interesting thing. That wasn't your typical album or typical song to song. It was like a journey through the Beatles in time, and it would be really cool because obviously we always wanted an Eddie Van Halen solo album, and as much as everybody talks about Van Halen 3 being one, I understand your point there, but it wasn't exactly what we're talking about. It would really make sense to have an instrumental, just Ed, basically. Really cool stuff there, but who knows if that'll ever happen. Maybe one day. Letter number 12 comes from Harry T. from Springfield, Massachusetts, and he says, "You are my favorite podcast, and I've been listening for many years, and I've learned so much from you guys and about your knowledge from Van Halen, with all your guests. And I want to tell you about Dean Del Rey had Michael McDonald on one of his podcasts, and about the 51-minute and 43-second mark, Dean asked Michael about I'll Wait, and I had not known about this story before, and Dave was not happy about Ed playing with the synthesizer, and Ted asked him to meet with McDonald at his office. Michael McDonald absolutely should have received credit and royalties at the time, but would that have changed things with the fans? I'm thinking back to my 16-year-old self when 1984 came out. What would have happened if rock DJs started introducing I'll Wait on the radio, mentioning Michael McDonald, and the rock magazines wrote about it? What do you think? Thanks for continuing to wave the Van Halen flag. Harry T. from Springfield, Massachusetts." Harry, the Michael McDonald thing is a real bone of contention because Dave was very leery about doing the keyboards at the time. That song was very different territory for Van Halen, but Dave, I thought, did a good job. But Michael McDonald apparently wrote the hook for that song, and I blame Ted Templeman for not giving him full credit there. It was really, really strange that Michael McDonald was a Warner Brothers artist. Ted Templeman was his producer. Don Landy was his engineer. How this guy didn't get credit is beyond me, but he did get paid out for sure, and he apparently made a boatload of money on that. Now, Michael McDonald has a book coming out. I think it's called What a Fool Believes or something like that, and perhaps he's going to address that in the book on I'll Wait. I think it's coming out in a couple months, so I'm very curious to see if anything comes out of that. Then there's that whole story about the secret tape that Dave had recording while he was listening to Michael McDonald, and he was playing it with Ted, and I don't know, maybe Al will address it in his book. Who knows? Maybe that'll happen. You never really know, but interesting thing about I'll Wait is it was kind of the closest thing Van Halen in the six-pack era, rather, came to a ballad. That and Little Dreamer, I would imagine. But it's a great song either way. It was a difficult birth, but great outcome. What do you think, Dave?
I don't know if the needle would have moved if the song starts getting introduced introduced as a Michael McDonald co-write. I mean, usually songwriters are the last to get any mention at all when it comes to songs. I mean, look, even now, you barely know who writes a song. It's streaming. You don't own it. So, I mean, maybe it shows up on the credits, maybe on the online credits, maybe it doesn't. So it's really a lost thing. People never seem to be interested on who's writing a song. So I don't think that would have changed things much. I mean, it's not like the song bombed as a single. It did really well without a video.
Yeah, without a video, by the way.
So the song did just fine. But it was a very rare co-write with an outside party. It was almost like they were almost embarrassed to have the co-write on there.
For sure.
You know, Michael McDonald, even then, was no slouch.
No.
I mean, today, he's like the king of yacht rock, right? I mean, he's on like every song, even if he's not the lead on every song. He's like on the background of every song. It's crazy. I'd be interested in looking at his book just for like the 5 or 10 pages he talks about Van Halen.
Yeah.
I never wanted a book so much just for like, you know, the half chapter on something. You know, he helped the band out and he did him a favor and he got screwed and you had to chase him down, which is not right.
Exactly. Letter number 13 comes from Jason Campbell from Nashville. And he says, with Alex Van Halen releasing a book, do you think this opens the door for Michael Anthony to finally write one? I know he has always said he wouldn't, possibly out of respect for the brothers, but perhaps now that Al has, maybe he'd have a change of heart. Knowing Mike's personality, I wouldn't expect anything scandalous, but it would be great read regardless, and probably the most unbiased out of them all. And he also said one more thing. With Alex Van Halen's book, will we finally get the official story on what the hell's going on Hot for Teacher? That's Jason Campbell from Nashville. Well, Jason, this is a great question. For sure, will this open the door for Mike to write a book? You know, you never fucking know. Mike might read something in that book and prompt him to write his own. And I told Greg Renoff, no joking, to call Michael Anthony up and offer his services because obviously he's got the cred, right? He wrote Van Halen Rising, did the Ted Templeman book. I said, you are the perfect person to do the Michael Anthony book. So get on that, Greg. Jump on it before someone else does. So that is the case there. You know, it's interesting because Michael Anthony would be the perfect person to write a book because he's not Ed, he's not Dave, he's not in the mix with all the controversy, and he could really give a nice perspective. And I'm not talking about dirt. I'm talking about like just from the inner workings of between these two giants. Would really be nice to get a cool perspective on that. Now, I don't know about Alex writing about Hot for Teacher. I would imagine if I was Alex's publisher, I would sort of insist that he talk about Hot for Teacher being that one of the most, you know, legendary drum intros of all time, right? So you gotta kind of clear that up and talk about that. I'm hoping that's in there myself. You know, I'm going to be the first thing I'm looking for. What do you think, Dave?
That would be cool if he talks about it and actually addresses the Lamborghini intro. And like I said before, he's not going to go into any deep dives on his drumming techniques on any of his songs, but that one is certainly iconic.
Yeah.
So hopefully he'll mention something about it.
He's got to do it.
Will Mike ever write an autobiography? Maybe. If Mike follows his pattern, it would almost be too nice. Like, he's not going to throw anybody under the bus, but it's going to be matter-of-factly, and he's going to give it to the publishing company, and they're going to be like, give us our advance back. Like the Billy Joel story you like to tell? Give us the advance back because we can't sell this book. There's not enough of anything in there. If he did, I'd certainly be curious because you probably get the least biased book of any band member from him.
Right.
So I hope he does consider it.
That would be great. Letter number 14 comes from Eric Torbeck, the perfect letter writer from New Jersey. He says, what up, guys? We know the story of the 1984 song is that it's a minute-long excerpt from a 30-minute-plus segment that Ed did on keyboards noodling around. Honestly, if given the chance to hear the entire song, how much of it could you listen to without stopping? P.S. Yes, I'm aware of the one-off extended version they played in 1984 in Quebec, and I'll admit it kind of drags on for me. Not sure if I can listen to 30 minutes of it. Eric Torbeck, the perfect letter writer from New Jersey. Well, Eric, it's always great to hear from you. I'm absolutely certain that I would listen to the whole thing without question because anything that Ed would perform, I would listen to fully, for sure. And I think it's over 40 minutes, if I remember correctly. But for sure, I would be curious to hear. I think To be honest, it would probably be very repetitive. That's my guess. So I would imagine you're going to quit early on this, Dave, right?
I would listen to the whole thing once, but I would not operate any heavy machinery while doing so.
Okay. Letter number 15 comes from Chris Pianelli from Staten Island. And he says here, like you and everyone else listening to this podcast, I am totally excited about the release of Brothers by Alex Van Halen in October, and I'm sure it'll be informative, touching, and funny account of the life and rise of the Van Halen brothers. I used to love listening to Rockline interviews with the members of Van Halen in the early 80s, the pre-Sammy era. These interviews are on YouTube, and Alex is absolutely hysterical in those interviews. If you haven't heard them, he seems like a really fun guy to be around, and I'm hoping some of those funny stories from him end up in the book. Keep rocking, Chris Pianelli from Staten Island. Yes, Chris, you know, Alex really has a unique opportunity here, and I hope he takes it. I mean, he's got to go deep and really shell out all the things in his relationship with Ed as well as with the band. I mean, he's almost got 400 pages here. You can't just fill it with Ed is great and how amazing was my little brother. There's got to be a lot of cool stuff. Then we talked about their journey as people coming from another country. They're immigrants. That's an unbelievable story in and of itself. His parents, their whole journey, him and Ed playing on the boat with his father. That's going to be very interesting. I would imagine it's going to take up a good early portion of the book, but I'm curious as to see how deep he goes. Now, the other thing I'm looking out for is I think Sam better strap in, because he better take a strong pour of tequila before reading this thing. I think he is going to get walloped in this book, because I think Alex is so mad from the 2011 book Red and the shit that has gone on in that book that he said about his brother. I think he's going to come at Sam pretty hard, and I think, to be honest, the whole Cabo Wabo thing is going to get exploited in there. You know, I'm curious to see what he says about Dave, you know, especially with recent times. It's so sad the way things have ended up, but it's amazing that the band is gone for like fucking 9 years now almost. And like the drama is still going. That's why Wolf doesn't want to engage, because it's like it just keeps going like a fanning of flames. But very curious as to see what he says there. Curious as what he says about Wolf. You know, there was some heat there that we don't know about 100%, but there was some tension there after Ed's death about that weird tour that they were going to do with Satriani and Newstead. I don't know if that's going to be in there. There's a lot of things, man. There's a lot of stuff to address. I don't even know if 400 pages could cover it, but I don't know. It all depends on who's editing this book, what the writer is going to help with him. What do you think, Dave?
I think you're right. I think there's going to be 100 pages of him just crapping on Sam. That's
what about Dave?
But you know what? To be fair,
about Dave? You think he'll crap on Dave?
Everybody forgets that, and we should really do this one day. Everybody forgets when Val's book came out.
Yes,
she wasn't exactly flattering Ed either.
Oh no!
In that book,
and very personal. Very personal.
Yes. And one day, Dave, you and I are going to have to reread that book and talk about it on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
But I think Val's book came out first, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, it did.
And she got a pass. She got a free pass.
Yeah, you're right.
She got and no one really talks about that.
No one.
No, and Ed invited her to his second wedding, for crying out loud.
He took the lumps.
He did. But Sam revealed some stuff that was just as bad, and now he's the devil incarnate. So, like, where do you stand on this stuff? Does it depend who you are and whether it's okay or not? It'll be interesting to see if Al addresses anything from Val's book.
Oh, that's right. I didn't think about that. That's for sure.
Sure.
The weird thing about Val's book is, this is the book Losing It. I forgot the year it came out, but the thing about Val's book is Wolf. Like, you have a son. You don't just write all that in public. That just hurts your kid. You know what I mean? It's like, what are you doing? So I don't...
Right. Yeah. Well, Sam had the same issue when he was writing about his ex-wife in the book. And I think one of his kids was like, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But one of his sons was like, yeah, we really weren't too happy with Dad for a while. I mean, that's not exactly what he said. I'm totally paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But that was the gist. They were like, Dad, really? So, yeah, you got to be cognizant of that stuff. But they feel like it is what it is. So it's hard to have a conversation like that in front of your kids. It's not exactly something you would talk about with them, but stories like that, the kids should hear about it from the parents, so they'll put it in the book. Everyone's got their line in the sand that they feel like they're willing to cross or not, and I guess Sam and Val's line was a little farther than everybody else's.
Absolutely. Letter number 16, the last letter of the night. Dave's absolute favorite comes from Stephen Brown. He says, I want to say that your podcast is great. Really look forward to it each month. You both do an excellent job of keeping the band, and specifically Eddie's legacy, alive. And he said here, regarding a fitting tribute for Eddie, I think someone needs to organize a similar setup to what happened with Taylor Hawkins, a one-off show in America and Europe with various musicians and bands playing their favorite Van Halen songs or their own songs to remember him. I don't agree that it needs to be a tour. I wouldn't go to Sam's tour even if it was coming to Europe. There is no easy answer to this, but I would like to see Wolfgang and Alex organize this, maybe with someone like Dave Grohl who could help facilitate things. He did a wonderful job with the Taylor Hawkins tribute, and he is a big fan. I would not invite Roth or Hagar because it would never happen with those two involved. It's about Eddie being recognized for his work, not so much the band. I think people forget that part. All the best, Stephen Brown. Well, Stephen, here's the thing. We talked about this ad nauseum, of course, and, the Eddie Van Halen tribute thing, and can't compare it to the Taylor Hawkins thing because Dave Grohl was absolutely motivated to do this, and he had all the infrastructure to do it. They were an active touring band, and Foo Fighters are one of the biggest bands in the world, and they could easily do that. Van Halen is defunct and dysfunctional. Dave has all the connections to put this together. Van Halen would have to have someone like Wolf or Al lead it. Neither one wants to do that. Then you got the Roth Hagar situation, which is a mess. Then Mike is sort of in the middle there, and everybody's wondering what the hell's going to happen. But we're coming up on the 4th anniversary of Eddie's death, and it's still nothing's happening. But really, the tribute to Ed, to be honest with you, is really Mammoth WVH, because it really is Wolf continuing the Van Halen name by making new music, by touring and getting out there. He's not playing Van Halen songs. He's doing his own work, and that's exactly what Ed wanted. He wanted him to go on, and what is he doing? He's recording at 5150, and he's making new music, and he's touring it, and he's getting that name out there. And Mammoth was the original name of Van Halen. So there's lots of tributes to Ed, but Mammoth WVH is the tribute to Eddie, for sure. Now, will there be a show in the future? I really think in years from now, someone will do it. I don't think it'll be anybody in the band, and I don't know if anybody in the band will even be involved. I really think the guitar... Or alive. But I think the guitar community could come together and do it. If you got someone like Nuno coming together with Dweezil, coming together with Zakk Wylde, coming together with John Five, and those guys who are like sort of Eddie's disciples and fans of Eddie come together, and they could put together a show where you have a house band and maybe rotating singers and rotating guitarists, everybody playing the Van Halen songs. That's the way to do it. Get the fucking band out of it. The band is a dysfunctional mess. It's like one of those balls of twine that you're never gonna undo all the knots because it's like impossible at this point. That's why Wolf doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to deal with it. It's just too much drama. It doesn't make sense. But I really do believe the guitar community will come around and pay tribute to him. I think they're leaving space for the Van Halen family to do it, and if once they don't do it, which they haven't been, someone's going to step in and do it. And it might be on the anniversary, like the 5th anniversary or whatever anniversary it is for his passing, that someone's going to say, all right, enough's enough, let's do this. And someone's going to take the lead, and the minute someone does, you're going to have everybody jump on board. I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that. And you're going to see it. What do you think, Dave?
I think even if you had Dave Grohl trying to put it together, it's still not going to happen because of the other parties involved.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Dave Grohl can make it happen with his own band because it's his own band.
He runs it.
And he calls the shots. He is clearly the leader, and that's why it got done. You could get Middle East negotiators in the middle of the Van Halen thing, and they still wouldn't be able to get a tribute concert. I know. You want to see the tribute concert? Go see Sammy Hagar.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the tribute concert.
Yeah, that's for sure. That'll be the Van Hagar version, but you know what? It'll be fantastic. Don't not go. That's ridiculous. If you're a Van Halen fan, go. You will enjoy it. If you're just a Roth fan, that's one thing. I understand you don't want to see Sam. That's fine. That's your own business. But I guarantee you that's going to be a killer show. Dave and I are looking forward to it. So, that wraps up the mailbag segment.
Mailbag.
And we are on to our interview with Fan Halen's guitarist Derek Fuller. Derek returns to the podcast after many years. We interviewed him, I believe, in the first year of the podcast, but we talk about the new album that Fan Halen has come out with. It's self-titled. They put together a Van Halen tribute album, and it really is fantastic. We talk about all about that, as well as playing in Fan Halen, which has grown extensively. The band is playing all over the country and overseas, and they are probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Van Halen tribute band out there right now, and really doing crazy business, putting on a massive show, which involves everything from completely duplicating Van Halen's equipment and sound and look and stage show and everything. So we get all into that with Derek, and that is all coming up next. Take a listen.
You know, up until 6, 8 months ago, Van Halen was entirely my life. All the things that were involved there, all the ancillary things, you know, the video world, the wardrobe, you know, you name it, the staging, the live, the advertising, you know, that'd be my life, you know. And then, change the system, you know, we're going to start change the way we're going to go about our business, you know. And I stopped having fun.
Take a trip to the rock concerts of the 80s in this new full-color 300-page book, Pictures Alive, filled with never-before-seen photos. Go back and see the mighty Van Halen at their peak from 2 amazing concerts in 1982 and 1984, plus photos from Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth's solo tours, and many other bands of the day. Filled with amazing photos, classic stories, original ticket stubs, and more. If you're a fan of Van Halen, you will not be disappointed. Hit the ground running with Pictures Alive, the new book, now available at picturesalive.net. That's picturesalive.net. picturesalive.net. Get it today.
Need a laugh? Check out the Funny How Comedy Podcast, which focuses on upbeat conversations with legendary comedians. It's free on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out on Facebook at Funny How Comedy Podcast, on Twitter at Funny How Podcast, on Instagram at Funny How Comedy Podcast, or email us at funnyhowcomedypodcast@gmail.com.
And if you would like to send us a letter asking a question or making a statement or whatever you'd like to say, you can send it to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Damon Johnson from Brother Kane and Black Star Riders, and you are listening to Dave and Dave Unchained. Crank it up.
Martin Popoff here. Hope you're enjoying this latest episode of Dave and Dave Unchained, the Wise Swamis on all things VH. Just wanted to remind you that at martinpopoff.com, I've got 2 Van Halen books that I wrote. One is Van Halen, a visual biography, which is basically a big hardcover coffee table book, 400 images, 20,000 word detailed timeline. And the other one is called Unchained, a Van Halen user manual. It's the sort of 120,000 word, very academic, a lot of crazy chapters, a lot of trivia, wordy book that I did on Van Halen. So yes, go to martinpopoff.com. I sign and ship those out of my office here in Toronto. There's PayPal buttons for the US, international, and Canada. Again, Van Halen, a visual biography, and Unchained, a Van Halen user manual. Back to Dave and Dave.
Hello, loyal listeners. Wanted to let you know about our new Patreon. If you like what we do and you have the means, drop us a donation to keep the podcast going. Go to patreon.com/DDUnchained. That's patreon.com/DDUnchained. Any size contributions are greatly appreciated. We have special packages to those who donate $45 or more. You'll get the Unchained package. Trust me, it's worth it. Contribute $65 or more and you can get the Romeo Delight package, which is Unchained plus more. $95 or more scores you the Top Jimmy package, which is the kitchen sink. If you're a Van Halen hardcore and listen to this cast, this is stuff you'll appreciate. It's ear candy. Those who want one of the packages simply email ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
That's DDUNCHAINEDPODCAST@gmail.com to make arrangements. What is understood need not be discussed.
From very early on, that it was kind of ingrained on us that if you're doing something that you like, then that is of the utmost importance, because in our family there were two opposites. There was my dad, the musician, the guy, the happy-go-lucky guy, you know, and let's have a drink, that type of thing. The other side was our mother. He says, you know, without a suit and tie, you ain't diddly. You know, you're nothing. You come by, you know, visit today or tomorrow, and she'll say, Alex, when are you going to get a job? You know, she's 75. And, Mom, does it really make any difference?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an incredible guest this evening. He is the lead guitarist in Fan Halen, a Van Halen tribute band. We haven't spoken to him in a while. It is Derek Fuller. Derek, welcome back.
Good to be back.
It's great to have you. Fan Halen, killing it all over the country. How many years is Fan Halen going now?
I'm almost embarrassed to say it's been 20 years.
Whoa! Congratulations. That's unbelievable. And you are going all over the country now, right?
Yeah, all over the country. Of course, we played all over the world, but yeah,
wow,
all over the country.
That's incredible. And are you doing this full time?
In fact, I am. I just retired. I was working at Google, and I decided to retire and just enjoy life. Part of my enjoying life is playing music.
How many dates would you say you do a year?
We are doing about between 60 and 75 right now.
Nice. That's more than once a week. That's incredible. So that's great. Number one, congratulations on your 20th anniversary here. But we're very excited to talk about Van Halen's first album. They have dropped an album which came out on Valentine's Day, which is Dave's birthday, by the way. So that was a little birthday present for Dave. And
very nice gift. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And so tell us, Derek, how did the idea come about to make an album?
So if you recall, we did the Access TV show, which was called The World's Greatest Tribute Bands.
Right.
We did it twice, right? We did it in 2014, and we did it again in 2016. And when we did that, they were putting together a compilation. All the acts that performed on that TV show, they wanted to have CDs or have streaming tracks available. So we initially did the recording back then. So we've been kind of sitting on it. We made a disc version of it, like a CD version of it. We would sell at shows. But we've been just kind of sitting on it and not doing anything with it. So in an effort just to get more exposure, we just signed on with a new booking agency that handles Ace Frehley and handles Vince Neil and handles Stryper and Queensryche and all those types of bands.
Yeah.
There's only 3 tribute bands on their roster. So as we're beginning to get these bigger shows, like we're playing at M3 this year, we're playing at Rocktember, we're playing a lot of different festivals with these types of acts, with Bret Michaels or with Dee Snider. We just wanted to have a little bit more exposure and kind of show us in that vein, in that light, that, you know, we are a band that is a little bit more than a tribute band. We're trying to be up there with those types of bands where you can actually listen to them on your favorite streaming platform. That was the catalyst really behind it, was to put it up there so that everybody could see it, hear it. And of course, when you go to Spotify, not only can you see or listen to our songs rather, but you can see when we're playing. It has our full concert schedule there. And also you can buy merch there. So it's just in an effort to get more exposure is why we did it.
That's fantastic. And I would imagine you could use it as a calling card for obtaining gigs, right? So it's sort of proof of the quality that you bring. And let me say here that here we are in 2024, and we haven't spoke to Derek in a while. We spoke to him in the earlier part of when we started the podcast. Now we're in a whole different realm in this world where tribute bands, and I want to note that it's high quality ones like Derek's, ones that really go the long lengths to do all the bells and whistles, to really cross all the T's and dot all the I's and deliver a Van Halen show. You're going to walk away drenched in Van Halen, and they're going to deliver it at a high quality. Now, we all know there's plenty of tribute bands out there. Not everybody is of the same quality, although we all are very excited about anybody who's paying tribute to Van Halen. But there's certain tribute bands that have gotten to theater levels, and like Derek just said, on par where he's going to be playing with Ace Frehley, or maybe he'll play with Vince Neil, so he's at that kind of level. So what has it been like to raise the bar and play at that level?
It's been amazing. It's a little intimidating at first. We just didn't know how the fans would react to go to a festival to go see these legendary 80s bands and then have a tribute band there. But they've welcomed us with open arms. Of course, Van Halen music, I mean, you just can't help yourself. Maybe if you're not sure about going to see the tribute band or the Van Halen band is going to open up at the big festival, but once they hear it and see it, usually they're all in.
Sure.
And it's been really, really pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
How do you think tribute bands have changed in the last 20 years since you started being in one?
I would say it's more the audience has changed. You know, I think we've been delivering a solid show for many years, but our crowds continue to grow. And I just think more people are now aware of tribute bands. Obviously, all the concerts in the park that all these cities across our country have, they've been hiring mostly tribute bands now, so people are familiar with them and understand what you get from them, the fun, the familiarity, bringing you back to a time that, you know, that when you're growing up, that was an awesome time in your life. So I think it's really the audience is now coming around more over the last 20 years since I've been doing it.
Have you noticed, Derek, that things change once the band, the original band, is no longer touring, has retired, is no longer together? Does that up the ante for someone in your position? Does that make your bookings go up? Because Van Halen, as we know, is no more, hasn't been on the road in many years now. So do you feel it? Do you feel that bump?
Absolutely. Yeah, we felt the bump, unfortunately, when Eddie passed. All of a sudden, had a lot of people reaching out wanting to book the band. And then, of course, any band that retired, they're just no longer available or just no longer out there performing. So, yeah, we have some good friends in a Queen band. When that movie came out, they just went through the roof. So those types of things definitely impact the tribute bands.
Absolutely.
Do you ever get any flack from artists? Like, for example, does Ace or Vince or anybody who you might be on the same ticket with, they're like, what are you guys doing here? You guys are a tribute band. You are so beneath us. It is insulting that we're playing with you. Does anybody give you any crap like that?
No, I mean, certainly not to our face anyway. There's one incident that happened. I won't name the band because I don't want to call them out, but they opened for us, and they were a pretty big band in the 80s, on the East Coast especially. And they opened for us, and he comes backstage into the green room and he goes, well, I never thought I'd be opening up for a Van Halen tribute band, but you know what? You guys are pretty cool.
That's true. And now it's interesting because I find the opposite. They almost get a kick out of the whole thing, because when you see a band that pays tribute to your music and doing it right, doing it quality, right? Number one, they're only boasting and enhancing your legacy, as far as I'm concerned. So you're out there waving the Van Halen flag all over the place, spreading the music. I mean, that's the way it is. And, you know, you guys are certainly making a living at it, and that's fine. However, you're also adding to the legacy of the band and giving people that juice that they want so badly that they can't get anymore. So that's kind of cool. Have you ever had any contact with anybody in Van Halen or gotten any response about your band from them?
Yeah, absolutely. From Eddie, we've gotten a couple of things from him. One was he loved the name, he thought it was clever and thought it was great.
Right.
Another time when we had Mark Stone sit in with, we played Greg Renoff's book release party in Pasadena. Right. And as you could imagine, that was terrifying, right? Because we were going to be playing to a room that grew up with that band. And people were just going nuts, and they couldn't say enough nice things about it, which obviously it felt great. But Mark Stone did send a picture of himself with the band to Eddie. And I kid you not, Eddie just said, who is that guy? He looks more like me than me.
That's hysterical. And so just to give our listeners a little taste, how did the band originally form? What was the precipice to get you guys all together?
I think it started probably when I went and saw my first tribute band, which was the Doors tribute band here in Los Angeles. It's been around forever. I think they've been around for 40 years. That's how long this has gone back.
Is that Crystal Ship?
No, they're called Wild Child.
Oh,
David
okay.
Dawkins,
That's another one. Yep. Okay.
That kind of sparked my interest. And then, of course, there was another Van Halen tribute band very popular, which was the Atomic Punks, when Ralph from Steel Panther was singing. And I went to go see them. And I was like, oh, man, this is amazing. This is incredible. So why not just do it? I guess that's the precipice. That's how it all started. Just because seeing them and understanding that it's a possibility to put a band together and play your favorite band's music. And what a kick. So that's kind of all how it started.
Absolutely.
How do you get along with the other Van Halen tribute bands?
Initially, it was tumultuous because we were coming up and the other ones were starting to lose gigs to us, so they would disparage us and do all that kind of stuff. They felt like they had a rite of passage, I guess. But lo and behold, they lost their singer, and that's when it became an even playing field. And then we ended up finally surpassing them over so many years.
Oh, yeah. Van Halen has become the number one tribute band right now. They really are. They've worked hard for many, many years. Tell us about how you decided to cultivate the look. I mean, you guys obviously dress like Van Halen, and you play the role of Eddie. You have like a 1984 type style, right?
We have all eras.
Oh, you do?
You know, the six-pack. Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
We played in Pasadena last year. We opened up with Let's Get Rockin'. I was playing the shark guitar with a striped shirt and the Capizio shoes. You know, we have all eras. 79, absolutely. We go through it all. I even wear the Where's Waldo outfit for 1981's Fair Warning tour.
Wow.
I'll do them all. I did have somebody once come up to me and said, he sees me in my Where's Waldo, right? It's the stripe, the red and white striped socks and the red and white striped shirt.
Right.
And he goes, did Eddie actually wear that? I'm like, no, man, I just dig this look.
That's funny.
Did you play the Van Halen stage, the one that was recently named for the band in Pasadena?
That's a great question. I wanted to. In fact, I reached out to the city of Pasadena to be able to do that. And they were very interested, but ultimately what it came down to is the stage is just unfortunately just a little rinky-dink thing.
Wow.
It couldn't even accommodate a band. I think they had an acoustic guitar guy playing the day that it was opened up or whatever. Yeah, we wanted to do that. On Sunday, we're going to go around and do some on-location photo shoots.
Wow.
I figure it's something that most Van Halen bands can't do because they don't live here in the epicenter of all things Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go up to the Whiskey. We're going to go up to Pasadena. We have access to the Panama car. We're going to be driving that around on Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, my
We're just going to have some fun with it. But yeah, we keep just trying to push the envelope here with this whole thing.
Isn't that Dave's car?
So the guy who had it built sold it to Dave. Then he regretted selling it and made an exact duplicate.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
So Dave still has it.
Yeah, I know. Dave loves that car.
Yeah, the guy wanted to buy it back, in fact, and Dave said, absolutely not. He's not selling. So he just made another one. And this guy, his California license plate say Panama.
Oh, that's incredible. Wow.
Are you guys going to pull up to Dave's mansion in Pasadena and honk the horn?
You know, I would, but I'm afraid I'd get shot.
Have you ever heard from Dave?
Never.
Wow. Okay. Well, you know, he's a recluse these days. He sort of just sits in his mansion.
I think I can certainly share this with you guys.
Sure.
My singer's close friend was dating somebody in the Van Halen circle, so it was like an assistant of Van Halen's. And he says to my singer, Ernie, he said, I was at Ed's house. I swear to God, a stack of Bibles, they had your name written down. They were looking at you. Now, I wasn't there to see it. I'm hearing it secondhand, but you asked about whether they have seats or not. That is a story that was told to us from somebody that is...
This is back when?
This would have been probably before the Dave 2007, so it had to be somewhere between 2004 when you went out with Sammy and 2007. So I'm assuming in that time frame, it's the only time frame that would make sense.
Yeah. What were they going to do with you if they already have Ed?
I was going to get front row seats.
Oh, okay. Well, let me tell you, it's incredible that these artists can reach out to the tribute artist and make a connection. I know, like, Nikki Sixx gets a total kick out of, Motley Crue tribute bands, and they enjoy them because, it's only a real compliment, to be honest. And if you're doing it right, it's really cool. I know Michael Anthony gets a kick out of it. Have you spoke to him?
Sure, I've spoken to him. He lives in the next city over, so I've seen him around, seen him at the airport and stuff like that.
Yeah, he loves that stuff. I
was going to mention another band. Obviously, Metallica is one of the biggest, hugest rock bands right now, and they took 3 tribute bands out on this last tour. So they would play on Friday, and then they would have tribute bands playing in and around the city on Saturday, and then Sunday they would play. So when they played that full weekend, they brought tribute bands out with them.
That's really groundbreaking. So now, getting back to your record a little bit, where did you record it, and who produced it?
We recorded it it was a home that was converted into a studio, like in Studio City.
Okay.
Somewhere in Los Angeles. It was, pretty low budget as far as producing and all that kind of stuff. There was one main guy kind of running the board. He had his other guy kind of running and, everything else. us as far as mic placements and all that kind of stuff. We sure could have used Landy on this one. It would have made it sound a lot better. But, you trying to record a record that it's so iconic, right? It's a no-win situation. We're never going to get the sound. We're not even the talent. It's ridiculous. So we're just, again, it's more of a celebration.
Yeah.
It's for fun. Enjoy it. It's nothing more. Someone said, do you guys think you're Van Halen? I said, listen, I wear a wig on the weekends and I'm playing at the Yamava Casino.
Right.
If I had the talent of Eddie Van Halen, I would be playing at the Forum right now. I'd
Right.
be playing at Madison Square Garden. What are you talking about? So don't get caught up in it,
Right. What was your approach going into the record? How did you choose the songs?
That's a great question. I'm not exactly sure how we chose them. I think we went for the bigger hits, I think, is what our thoughts were. I think we played those songs we probably played on the TV show when we played it.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that's another reason why we chose those songs. I think those were mainly the reasons why we chose them.
And you didn't do anything from Women and Children First or Diver Down. Was there a reason for that?
Nope, not consciously,
Okay.
We play a lot off Diver Down. We play a lot off Women and Children. So
Right, okay. Now, just out of curiosity, how many songs do you guys have in your arsenal? How many do you actually know?
Sure. We know about 4.5 hours worth of material, I suppose. If you go to our website, which is just fanhalen.com or fanhalen.net, I think the EPK page.
Okay.
It has our full list. Every song that we do is there.
Okay, wow. So you would even do songs that haven't been released?
You mean like Let's Get Rockin'?
Yeah, you're like Let's Get Rockin', yeah.
Yeah. And
wow.
I call that one Let's Get Rockin' / Out of Space.
Oh, right, Out of Space. So now, do you do anything from A Different Kind of Truth?
A funny story is we did, when the album first came out.
Okay.
What was that, 2012?
Yep.
We started doing Tattoo. And we did this skit where we used to do this. We haven't done this in years. We were playing at the House of Blues in Houston. And we would do a skit where we'd kind of go into a Sammy era Halen, and then Dave would get, hey, hold on. Hey. People didn't come here to see that, that kind of thing. Stop the band mid-song, and then we'd go into.
Right.
So we did that with Tattoo, where we started playing Tattoo. There's only one video of us playing it, and it's at the House of Blues in Houston. As we're playing it, from somebody from the audience, you see the guy standing in front of this guy, starts putting his, the thumb down.
Oh my God. Yeah, people have an issue with
Tattoo.
that song. It's amazing.
So,
I thought that song was great. I don't know why people have an issue with it. Now, what about She's the Woman? That seems like a perfect one to add in the set.
Yeah, no, we haven't done it.
Oh, really?
We tried Tattoo. It didn't go over well.
Okay.
I think people, doing this as long as I have, even playing some of the deeper cuts, which we love to play. And we still do. It's not that we don't. But, you got to be careful, and it's got to be a good balanced set, because, you can lose an audience, You're sitting there watching the crowd, and, you're playing hit after hit. All of a sudden, you go into something that they're not quite familiar with. You can see people starting to lose a little energy. So
absolutely.
Do you think a lot of the audience are just average fans as opposed to diehard fans?
It all depends, right? Because a lot of times we'll play a venue or a theater that it's a paid ticket. People are coming to see Van Halen. They're going to be either hardcore Van Halen fans, or they're going to at least be moderately, but certainly familiar with the music. And then we play other shows like on these festivals where, a lot of the fans, they're going to obviously know Van Halen music, but they may not be diehard Van Halen, or if we play, let's say, these concerts that we do for the summer season where you play for the city, and they're all putting up, their beach chairs with their bottles of wine, then we really go heavy we play California Girls, we play Dancing in the Streets, we play all those songs that will at least get those people involved.
Okay. And you don't do any Sam era stuff, right?
We don't. We have done it where we had a Sam impersonator come up on stage. In fact, the second time we played the Access TV show, I think we did like 3 songs with a Sammy Hagar guy.
Okay. But normally you don't, right? You stick to the
Normally
six-pack?
we don't. We tried doing this ZZ Top Beer Drinkers Hellraiser, which Van Halen did on the Diver Down tour, and having our bass player sing it, and that's on YouTube as well. I remember after the show, somebody goes, "Man, why'd you guys play that ZZ Top show, man? You guys took a Van Halen song away from me." So you just can't please everybody.
I know.
Wow, that's interesting, because that's one of the best live covers they ever did.
That's a deep cut, too. Yeah, it's a deep cut. That's a beautiful cover. So that's really cool. So now, in terms of feedback, have you gotten any feedback from the album since it's come out?
A lot of people seem to be enjoying it. I can certainly see the numbers of people who are enjoying it, and that's been a huge spike, of course, from our, because we didn't have much up there before. There's a lot of people who just don't get tribute bands are like, why? I can understand that, I can understand that as well. What I always tell people who don't understand tribute bands are people who say, well, gosh, you guys are talented. Why aren't you playing your own music? I always say, well, think about Jamie Foxx, who played Ray Charles, or Ravi Malek, who played Freddie Mercury in the Queen movie, or the guy who just played Elvis, Austin Butler. I said, all these guys, and many of them got Oscars for their performance, but it's just entertainment. And obviously this is entertainment people enjoy.
Sure.
We're just doing the same thing, but we're doing it live.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, obviously, you have the hardest job because you have to recreate a legend. So what kind of pressure is that on you every night? I mean, that is like, go ahead, go play like Michael Jordan. I mean, that's like a hard thing to pull off. So what do you do to train, to get ready to do this every night?
You first mentioned the stress or being intimidated or anything like that. I guess I did originally when I first started doing it, because those shoes are unfillable, and I know that. And I say that about any tribute band. Any band in their prime, whether it's Journey or it's Kiss, it doesn't matter. That band in their prime, no tribute band will ever touch those bands in their prime.
Sure.
So we first have that mindset. We're going to try to give it our best and just try to make it enjoyable for everybody. I don't have any pressure anymore. I don't even think about it. I know the music well enough. Some people will come up to me and say, wow, you play just as well as Eddie does. And I say, well, here's the analogy. I say, Eddie is the master. He is the Van Gogh. He is the Michelangelo. I am paint by numbers. I just fill in his spot. Little dots, I fill them in. And I study the shit out of that because it's fun for me. It's a passion for me. So when I listen to our recording, what's streaming now, our album, that was 5 or 6 years ago. So I can hear things and they're like, I would have done that a little bit different now.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That type of thing.
Yeah.
Because I get a kick out of just learning little nuances of Eddie's playing. You've probably seen that the Sydney show just came out.
Oh, yeah.
From 2013.
Yeah.
It's a great recording. You can see everything. It's just beautiful. There's a part in the song Dance the Night Away where it's, ooh, baby, baby. That whole part. You see what Eddie's doing there. He's playing an odd chord where he's playing the G, but he's moving his pinky down to catch the A and not moving the chord, but just moving part of the chord. I knew he was playing the sixth string on this part of the song, but didn't know he did that. And that to me is like gold. It's like,
Yeah.
That much more closer.
Yeah, that's true. Just like a little extra things you pick up from the live performances. It's so true. And, it's so great to have the video. I think it was Nuno Betancourt who said, these kids today have it so easy because they could go on YouTube and look at the hands zoomed in. We used to have to sit and try to figure it out from the record. So,
Exactly right. I'll never forget when Pretty Woman came out on a 45. And all my friends, we all went home, put that 45 on, and we just sat there and tried to figure every note out, slowing it down, put your finger on the record to try to slow it down a little bit.
Sure.
And that's how we used to do it.
Absolutely. That's the way everybody did it. Absolutely. So now, in terms of Eddie's legacy, obviously, we lost Eddie in 2020, which was really hard. Where were you when you heard? Did it shock you, or were you aware of his condition?
I was aware of his condition because we have played for George Lopez a couple of times.
Okay.
And he had a restaurant opening that he had us play at, and he shared with me the news that he wasn't doing well.
Oh, it's
and that things were not going well. I was a little bit aware of his condition, but like everybody else, I was deeply, deeply saddened to tears, And,
sure.
And I tried talking to friends about it. That day I remember just breaking down and I felt like I lost somebody that was so close to me.
Sure.
Although, we've never met.
Do you remember what your first show after that was?
It was just a few days afterwards, in fact. I was at a big casino out in the yard, out in the lawns. It was a very big show. As you remember, it was just getting out of COVID.
Yep.
So everybody was separated. But I did a tribute. I put together a video montage of Ed as I played all the various pieces of Cathedral and Spanish Fly and Eruption and all the little things, that little guitars intro and all that kind of stuff. So trying to pay my respects.
Of course. So now, do you feel that weight when you go out and now that you play, that there's that moment? Obviously, Eddie's gone, but never forgotten, of course, and always remembered. So when you have that moment where you're going to solo, I'm assuming you have a solo section in your show, right? So, do you feel that heaviness to deliver in his honor type of thing?
Probably the first year after he passed, I would always talk to the audience before I went into my solo, or I'd start my solo and then stop and talk and basically say that Eddie was our modern day Mozart, that he was our modern day Beethoven. We've never experienced anybody with that type of musicianship that moved the human spirit like Eddie did. And I'd take a little time to mention that and have everybody on the count of three, let's give him a big roar. So I would do that for the first year, and I haven't done that since. But, every time I finish my solo now, I, of course, give a look up above.
And now,
my heart.
What have you found to be the most challenging thing to pull off of all of Ed's work? Was there one song, one solo, something that was just an absolute bitch?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and a lot of it has to do with having consistency. Each room is different. Each room acts different. So when you're playing outside, or you're playing inside, or you're playing in a cavernous theater, or you're playing in a small club filled with people, it's beer-soaked stage, all those things play into the way the guitar responds. Something like the beginning of Mean Street, having the ability to do that consistently is always a challenge, and I practice it like almost every day. So that was
tough as Joe Satriani.
There you go. There's a lot of people who called out Joe, and I thought that was really disrespectful.
Well, first of all, it's Sammy's fault. That was ridiculous because he wasn't prepared to do that. I mean, he wasn't.
Of course not.
That's ridiculous. Come on. That's stupid. If he does play it, he'll have it done right. But, you can't just do that off the cuff. Yeah.
He will slay it.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. In terms of the crowd, which song really ignites everybody? Which song gets everybody out of their minds? Is there anyone that would surprise people like Atomic Punk or something, or On Fire? Is there any particular song that really pours the gasoline on the fire?
There's several of them, but I don't think they're going to surprise you. Certainly Hot for Teacher gets people going crazy. Believe it or not, Jump. I mean, they all come out of their seats during Jump.
Sure.
Ain't Talking About Love. We always do the hop. The Hear About It Later hop.
Yep.
The three of them are doing.
Sure.
We put that in Ain't Talking because Ain't Talking is a song we know we'll play every night. Hear About It Later we won't, so we do the hop there. We've been doing this for years. So all three of us go back to the drum riser and we go into Growth. Unless you're diehard, you have no clue what we're doing. And then go into Ain't Talking, just as Van Halen did at the outset. So I think they went into You Really Got Me. As soon as you go into those notes, people go nuts.
That's crazy. Dave and I feel that, and that's why we named the podcast Dave and Dave Unchained. Unchained, we feel, just a personal opinion, is the quintessential Van Halen song because it has all the elements of Van Halen. Like I always say, if someone never heard Van Halen before and doesn't even know what the band is, and I needed to play them one song to define the band, I would play them Unchained because of the intensity of it, the humor of it, the energy of it. It just seems to just reek of Van Halen. And how does Unchained go over in your set?
That song has so much energy. It's a great one. Obviously, Van Halen opened with it 2 tours. We certainly opened with it a lot. We also opened up with Light Up the Sky and On Fire, just as they did. I always think, and as a guitar player, most guitar players will think along what I'm going to say is I'm the One is the quintessential Van Halen song.
Really?
To me, that song is more, encapsulates everything that Van Halen is. Just because Unchained is a detuned song, so it's not a normal tuning.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different and a darker song than most. And then I'm the One is more of a swing song.
That's
true. That's where Alex and Eddie's roots are in playing swing.
Yep.
And I don't think they consciously play like, hey, let's make this a swing song. I just think that's in there.
Right.
That's the way they played. That's how they grew up.
Yep.
So I'm the One has that incredible swing. It has 2 solos. It has the bop bada shooba-doo-wah.
Right.
And I just think that song, to me, if you had to send one song up to space that encapsulated Van Halen for mankind to find hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years later, I would want to send I'm the One.
I also think that Out of Love Again really shows off the Van Halen brothers' chemistry. The back and forth between Alex and Ed in that song is unbelievable. The heat that Don Landy and Ted Templeman captured between those two was really unbelievable. So now, did you record in the same room together when you made the album?
Yeah, that's a great question. And And the answer is no. Believe it or not, and I'm still baffled by this, and I scratch my head. Our drummer went in first.
Wow.
So he's going in with no accompaniment, no other
God.
musicians, and had to learn those songs by just playing. And how do you know how many times until you know the verse, then you got the chorus, you got the bridge? I don't know how he did it. So he did that. Then the bass player went in by himself.
Sure.
Then I went in and played the guitar. Singer went in last, and then we did backing vocals at the very end.
And on the album, which song do you think you nailed the most? Is there one on the album that you think you really got it right?
I think several songs have moments that you go, huh? You might go, huh? Am I who? What? Wait a second. Is this
Right.
Van Halen? Or is this
Right.
I think there's two songs that capture that. I think Atomic Punk sounds amazing to me, and I think Unchained sounds amazing. Of course, now it's not going to have there at Sunset Sound. They have Don Landy in there.
Oh, of course.
Ted Templeman's in there.
Yeah.
And, they have that amazing echo chamber.
Sure.
They have all those great things. And I know there was some layering going on, and I didn't do any of the layering. In other words, I don't believe I played, like the intro to Panama to me sounds very thin in comparison.
Okay.
Where I'm sure Van Halen had how many guitars on top of it
Right.
to make it sound like huge.
Right.
And of course, back then, I think Eddie was using his wet setup, so that sounds huge in of itself. But I'm just using one cabinet, one head, and
Well,
but I was using Eddie's cabinet.
Really?
I had bought a lot of Eddie's cabinets, all the ones you see at the US Festival.
Okay.
The gray carpet. They're made by Flag Systems here in Orange, California.
Okay.
At one point, Van Halen sold all those through Guitar Center.
Oh.
So they ended up getting into a lot of people's hands.
Wow.
And I started picking them up.
Wow.
So I probably had, at one point, I had probably about 6 cabinets.
Wow.
So I had a ton of them. But these things are made to go on world tours, you know what I mean? So they are heavy. They're made of birch wood.
Oh, geez.
They got wheels that are the size of 3 inches big. They were ungodly difficult for me to, put into an SUV and take them to a show.
Absolutely.
But I did play through one just, because I thought that'd be cool.
How much of Eddie's gear do you use? Do you use his EVH gear? And how many guitars do you work with?
Of course, I have lots of guitars. I probably have about 20 or so guitars.
Okay.
Of everything that you could imagine, whether it's the Circles or the Shark, as I mentioned.
Right.
Of course, I probably have 3 versions of the Frankenstrat, where I have the beak neck for the US Festival. I have the Fender Strat neck or the Banana neck. I have all of them. I have the EVH stuff. I have some EVH. I have a stealth EVH and I have a white one. We talked about this at one point. Is that when you get to a certain age, is it going to be silly for us to be dressing up as if we were Van Halen in their 20s? At some point, it's going to look ridiculous for things. So, so I have these other guitars ready. So when we want to go to the 2015 look, we could absolutely do that. Now, I'm not saying that we are doing it or that we will do it, but it's been something that we've certainly discussed. And the analogy my drummer said to me, because he's vehemently against it, he wants to stay what we're doing. He says, when I got let's say the News Lozauer book, the Ed book, he has all eras. He's got Sammy Hagar eras, he's got recent eras. And he goes, tell me, Derek, what did you enjoy looking at most? That's how your audience feels.
Right. So, of course.
As long as we can get away with it. Here's another interesting observation.
Yeah.
Because, I started doing this when I was in my 30s. Now it's 20 years later.
Right.
And I was concerned, nobody's going to want to see a guy in his 50s,
right.
Dressing up and pretending to be Eddie Van Halen. But what I didn't take into account is that my audience is growing older with me.
Of course.
So when they look at me, I'm still their age.
Right.
They don't look at themselves as old guys.
Right.
I keep myself in shape. I work hard at it.
Yes, you do.
I try to look as young as possible. It hasn't been an issue. Our audience continues to grow, and, it's fun.
And let me tell you something. There's more pressure on Ernie, who plays Dave. Obviously that's a challenge as well, because although he's not technically challenged the way you're technically challenged, in the sense that you got to really duplicate all the hoopla that Ed does, he's got all the physical challenge, right? So that's a lot to take on. And so tell me, how does Ernie keep up?
Yeah, Eddie was no slouch on stage, as you know.
No.
Ernie's got so much enthusiasm when he's up there, and he goes for it every night. The guy is an entertainer. He's just born an entertainer.
Right.
One of those guys that can entertain a crowd. But the funny thing is, I guess, a lot of times when we walk into a venue and they have the drum riser up, we'll look at each other and know, we're not jumping off that tonight. Or, okay, that's the perfect
right.
height, or we'll find something that we'll put in front of the drummer that will jump off. That's perfectly fine. But anyway.
So I wanted to ask you, do you still have the same lineup of the band from all the 20 years, or have you changed?
It's changed a little bit here and there,
okay.
certainly. But my singer's been in the band for about 15 years.
Okay.
So he and I go way back. The drummer has been in the band, out of the band, in the band, out of the band, now back in the band. He's one of those situations. The interesting thing about bass players is when you try to find a bass player, I always say my first thing is I need to find a singer who can also play bass, because you got to have that high harmony and all that kind of stuff. So I'm on my third bass player through those 20 years.
Yeah. Now, who do you see in the crowd these days? Dave and I are 54, so we're probably right around near your age. We grew up, we're in Gen X, of course, that we're right in the heart of the Van Halen crowd. So who do you see out there? Do you see pretty much guys our age? Do you see a mix of men and women? Do you see younger people? Who do you see?
Yeah, by and large, the demographic of this is certainly right now would be in their 50s. So it's just like you and I. But, what the thing that we do have is you have parents that indoctrinated their kids into Van Halen.
Sure.
Growing up and listening to it in the car. So they become huge fans of the music because they grew up with it. So we definitely see younger people. Typically, they're either with their parents or their parents got them into it, of course. The luxury of playing Van Halen music is women do enjoy it.
Yeah.
So we're not a Metallica or a Megadeth.
Right.
Something that we'd never see a girl. We have lots of women who enjoy it and
That's
they love
great.
to dance to it.
That was part of what Dave added to the band, was that he said, we got to get girls here so they can dance, so we want to add some pop elements into this rock. We always joke around in the podcast that, they're sort of like the peanut butter and the chocolate coming together to form this great flavor. Dave added so much to the band. Ed's obviously a genius musically, but Dave really created a lot of pop sensibility and a lot of commerciality that he injected in the band, and it really kind of gelled well with the incredible musical wizardry of Ed and Alex. That's what has that unique Van Halen flavor.
And Steve Rosen put out Alex Van Halen's interview, and he acknowledges Dave for his impact on the band. He even says, he speaks disparagingly against Dave, because remember, that was right when the breakup happened.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But he does say, and he acknowledges that he and Ed would probably be playing music, great music, but probably in a room somewhere. Dave was one of the reasons why they became so popular. So at least he acknowledges that and understands that, which is great to hear.
How many times have you seen the original band?
As far as seeing Van Halen, the first show I got to see was in 1979. It was the Van Halen 2 tour.
Oh, wow.
I was old enough, I could have seen Van Halen at Anaheim Stadium where they did the parachute thing. My brother and one of my best friends at the time, his brother, they both went to that show. They were big Black Sabbath fans.
Oh, wow.
We're kicking ourselves, looking back and going, wow, we could have possibly been to that show, because we had both been to a concert by then. I think we saw Kiss in 1976. So it wasn't like we hadn't been to concerts, but we just didn't go. We just didn't know much about Van Halen at the time or understand that. So once we finally got turned on to Van Halen, that was it. So 79, we saw that tour, and then every tour after that during Dave, we'd go to multiple nights.
Wow.
So when they typically would play Los Angeles, they would play 3 nights. We would go to at least 2.
What do you think was the band's peak?
I know everybody says 84 because it was, commercially, the biggest tour and the biggest selling record and all that kind of stuff at the time. I was such a fan of that band that it was just gold to me. Every album that came out, every tour that came out, to me it was all a peak. It was those years between I saw it in 79 and then through 84 and getting to see all that. That was just, obviously it changed my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave and I never got to see the original lineup on tour together. I've seen everything from 5150 on. I grew up listening to the original band, but I wasn't allowed to go to concerts until I was 14, and the minute I turned 14 and I tried to go see Van Halen, tickets had already gone on sale and they were sold out, and my dad refused to pay $50 a ticket for the scalper, so I couldn't go. But, obviously we lived through YouTube and stuff like that, and I wanted to ask you, in terms of that, do you watch old videos on YouTube to pick up tips, ideas for the band going forward?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything we incorporate, our tagline is Fan Halen, the world's most authentic tribute to Van Halen. And I got the idea because of BMW is the ultimate driving machine. They have their tagline. So I came up with this tagline. Anything that they did is fair game. In other words, I want everything. I want the drummer to be moving like Alex. I want the bass player to be banging his bass like Michael. And I want him to use his mouth during Running with the Devil. I got to be doing these Eddie leaps and stuff. So we study the heck out of that stuff. And sometimes when someone says, hey, look, why don't we do this? I said, well, show me where Van Halen did it. Well, they didn't, but it'd be, no, let's don't do that. We're the world's most authentic tribute. Let's don't deviate from that. Let's just try to stay the course here and deliver that show. Try to deliver that so when people come to it, they go, oh my God. I remember when I was 17, it was the summertime. I had my girlfriend with me. We went to the show.
Right.
That's our job.
Right, of course.
To bring them back.
Of course.
Is there a particular live show that you like to watch or listen to?
Well, that new Donington show, I mean, I was floored. I mean, it was like, what a Christmas gift that was.
Yep.
I have a copy of it. Somebody made a great copy of it. And so I just watched it this week, and I had a friend who hadn't seen it yet. But it's such an amazing video because they're on a smaller stage, right? It's not their stage. It's this Monsters of Rock stage.
Yeah.
AC/DC's going to go on next. And even Dave goes up on the ladder and says, this doesn't go anywhere. So it's interesting to see them on a similar size stage that we would play and to see their interaction, see this band that really was, in most people's eyes, at their peak and how they operated. You're seeing Eddie and how he wants his sound or how he's getting upset on certain things. I believe his pedal board up on Alex's riser is not working. Like he goes into the quiet part in Hot for Teacher, but it doesn't go quiet. It stays distorted. And you can see him upset about that. It's just interesting to see all the workings. And then even after the show and how they're interacting with Entwistle and Neil Schon and the wives and all that stuff. And Rudy Laren is there. What a gift that video is.
Yeah.
But I enjoy all of them. I really do. And I don't know if you saw, you probably didn't, because it was the 40-year anniversary of the S Festival last year. We did a reenactment of the S Festival, and it was just an amazing.
We promoted it on the podcast. We talked about, obviously we're promoting it for people to go to it. Dave and I talked about on it. We couldn't go because we live all the way on the East Coast. Yeah, that was a great idea. And that must have been fun. What was that day like for you?
It was magical. It really was. It was really my baby that I put together.
Yeah, brilliant.
I handpicked the band. I handpicked the MC, put the schedule together. The only thing, we wanted to do it in an outdoor venue, of course, because that's where the Oz Festival was. Outdoors.
Sure.
And we had a venue lined up to do that, but they weren't cooperating. So we had to do it in a venue that was indoors. The good thing about it has 2 stages. So we could make it run like clockwork.
Wow.
We did. And everybody had such a great time. It was like, it really was to me, it was like one of the best shows we've ever done. Not because of how we performed or, when we were on stage.
Yeah.
But it was just a magical day that I got to be at the S Festival, and now I'm reenacting
Wow.
it. We didn't have 300,000, but we had a good crowd.
How would you describe the energy at the US Festival when Van Halen came on? Now, obviously, it was a long, hot day, but it seemed like the crowd still had the energy to get it up for Van Halen.
Yeah, I have an interesting perspective on that because when I went to the S Festival, and let me just, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to just something, say I was going to mention something, but I don't want to forget it.
No, go ahead.
It's about the S Festival.
Yeah.
I went online I think it was on the Fan Halen Facebook page, or it was on my personal one. I think it was on the Fan Halen one. And I defended Dave because so many people, and even Noel Monk talks about that being their worst show.
Yeah.
And that Dave was completely trashed and that he couldn't remember lyrics and all that kind of stuff. I've been a fan and seen so many shows. A lot of his shtick was, I can't remember the effing words.
Right.
Drinking the bottle with the 2 little people, security people.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I defended. I said, listen, I've watched the show. You've all watched the show. You don't jump off an 8-foot riser and do the splits and land it and then keep playing and if you're trash.
No, of course.
I'm sure he had plenty to drink and he might have had other substances, but was he trashed? Did he give a horrible performance? Maybe it wasn't his best, but to me it was Dave, and Dave is the ringmaster, and maybe I'm looking through my Fan Halen glasses, but I think he did a great job on that show, and I enjoy the show thoroughly. But as far as the crowd, I mentioned I had been going to concerts for quite a while at this point, so I kind of knew what to do. I'd been to other festivals. So we got there the night before. In the morning, everybody kind of rushes the gate, which is fine, and we just kind of hung back. So if you could picture this massive massive crowd, but then they have these aisles that they have that is left so people can get around, right? So it's not
Sure.
just one pond of people. So they have these aisles. So we knew, as experienced concert goers, we sat on the aisle, meaning in front of us was nobody, just the aisle where people could walk by us. But we had air, we could breathe, had a cool breeze coming. We just knew this is where we're going to hang all day. We're going to hang back. And when Van Halen goes on, that's when we make our move to the front. And by the time Van Halen did go on, and I think they were late going on, people were tired and bailing. So of that 300,000, I don't know how many people left, but I'm sure it was a pretty big number. So it made it easy for us to make our move and go up front. And
Right.
that's exactly what we did.
Sure.
But, the people we were with up front, it was frenzy.
Yeah, it's interesting about Dave and his live persona. I have watched so many videos and also seen him live so many times. I don't know how you feel. He has an interesting flow live. It's kind of like, sometimes he skips lyrics here and there. I don't think it's because he's trash. I think it's an ADD thing. I think he gets a little distracted by the crowd and comes in and out of the song at times. I don't quite know what it is, but there's something going on there. And, there are times when, it's like, Dave, focus, to keep on the lyric. And there are times when he actually tries to really focus, and he does well. He did more of that. The last time Dave and I saw him, which was literally right before the pandemic hit, in his Vegas shows, and he was making a very strong point to stay on lyric, and he did a great job. And I saw him open for Kiss doing the same thing, and he was very good doing that. And then on the last Van Halen tour, which was 2015, he was staying more on point with the lyrics. So it's interesting to note these little intricacies that we all fawn over in terms of these videos. And I tell you, I love this time because I call it Unleash the Hounds, because I tell people, if you got it, post it, because we're only getting older and we want to enjoy this stuff while we can. And the band doesn't like to release stuff. They don't want to release anything. In fact, they're taking things away. Like, we can't even get A Different Kind of Truth on streaming anymore. So, it's to the point where if there are videos, I don't know if you saw, but they just put out the Tokyo Dome video just today, or what was it, yesterday, Dave? They put out the whole video professionally shot of Tokyo Dome from, what was that, the 2013, I think.
I think the same guy who released the Australia show also released the Tokyo Dome.
I was not aware of that. I look forward to
you got to check that out.
It just came out.
Yeah.
But again, like Dave and I go gaga when this stuff starts coming out, because we know people have this stuff on their hard drives, in their closets, like wherever. Just don't let it sit there and rot and be lost to time.
Yeah.
I do have something. This is breaking news.
Oh, boy.
But I do have something.
Okay.
That I have not shared, because I was told not to share it.
Okay.
But if I don't share it, the person who gave it to me has since passed.
Oh.
And that would be Mark Stone.
Okay.
So he gave me some recordings of songs that nobody's heard, obviously nobody outside the circles. So I've been sitting on it, and just out of respect, of course, for him, I haven't done anything with it, and I have not shared it. Literally, I haven't even shared it with friends necessarily. But it would be something I know people would enjoy hearing.
Oh, sure. Now, is this rehearsals?
I think it has to be a rehearsal, yes. I don't think it's live. I don't even know how many shows they did with Mark. They were still, just a backyard or a high school. They played at high school and stuff at that point, I think. It's with Mark, and it's got some songs we play differently than we're accustomed to hearing the recording.
Wow. How long is it?
I want to say I have 3 songs.
3 songs. Okay. And they're unknown songs?
No, they're known.
Oh, they're known.
Played differently. One's in an entirely different key that you'll know.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow.
I should probably release that.
Why the hell not? It's only in honor of these guys because, what's going to happen? Everybody's just going to listen and enjoy. No one's going to make money off of it. It's just for people to listen to and to revel in a band that they're so passionate about. And, it's the time. The band is over, and it's been over for a long time. Eddie's gone, and Mark is gone, and it's gotten to the point where, what's the difference? I don't know why they just don't release everything, but, they're very particular about every single thing. Even when they did the Sammy box set, they're putting, this is a rarities disc. It's like, well, how rare is that stuff? Because all that stuff is available. You know what I mean?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
so,
not very rare.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you that we're very biased, admittedly.
Yeah.
But we think you should release it. And if you want to send it to Dave and I just to test the waters, we can give you our contact information.
It's like Steve Rosen releasing, or Jan, the guy who wrote for Guitar Player, releasing those tapes of the interviews with Eddie, or even Steve releasing the one with Alex. And you're getting to hear him speak, but what is so gold about the recording that they did finally release is you're hearing Eddie play.
Yeah.
And you hear his playing unaccompanied, just him and a guitar in his hands. And as a guitar player, your jaw just drops. Like, that's why nobody can touch this guy. Just hearing him play is just like, oh my God, there's something so special about it.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like you said, the 1984 live show or the studio stuff that came out around that time. The same week that they released the collection part 2, there was all sorts of stuff from the studio from the first 6 albums that was unreleased.
Oh God, that was tremendous.
Oh, yeah. I've
right?
I mean, quite a while. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the kind of stuff people want. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody is going to come running to that, but Van Halen is a big American band, and there's still an appetite for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Despite the band's best efforts not to release any of it. It's just mind-boggling how, like every other band, there's always 2 extremes. There's Van Halen, who releases nothing from the vaults.
They take away.
Kiss, who would sell their parents if they could and put them in the kabuki makeup, right? I mean, but those are the 2 extremes. And then all the other bands are somewhere in the middle. And it's like, if you want to keep the legacy going, even if you don't want to make a buck, if you want to keep the legacy going, you've got to do something, because it's not just going to automatically feed itself forever. The Beatles aren't still known by every generation today simply by accident or because they're getting radio play. I mean, it's a very concerted, on-purpose effort that's being made.
For sure. And here's the other thing, Derek. You'd be quite the hero, my friend. Quite the hero. Everybody would be like, oh my God, that's incredible. They would lose their mind. So now, can you mention the names of the songs?
I know for sure 2 of them, and I will mention them. One is my very favorite Van Halen song, which I mentioned earlier, I'm the One.
Oh, cool.
You mentioned Mark Stone playing on I'm the One. And the other one that's in a completely different key is Take Your Whiskey Home.
Oh, wow. Okay, and the other one is an unknown track?
I can't recall which song it is. It might be an unknown one. I obviously haven't listened to it in a long time, so I don't know the 3rd track.
How did it come about that he gave them to you?
I befriended Mark when we met. He would play with us on several occasions, come out and play. We'd ask him to come out and then just enjoy himself. He loved it. He really had a blast with it. And I always told him, listen, I don't want to use your fame for any, you know what I mean? I just want to be just careful on that. But he's something he really enjoyed. His brother, which you probably heard on the Alex Van Halen interview, actually sang with the band at one point. His name's Brad Stone. He would tell me, like, oh man, you're making Mark so happy. He's having the time of his life. They were just really sweet people, and Mark's wife. It was great to get to know them.
He's the Pete Best of Van Halen.
That's true. Very true. I was going to mention as far as Van Halen and having, how is it that bands like The Who can have amazing live recording, even The Doors? These are 1960s bands. And Van Halen couldn't put out a decent video?
I have the answer for you. It's very simple. The answer is, of course they could. There's a whole treasure trove of things that are in the vaults. In fact, Brian Kehoe, he made an entire box set that they made him shelf. And I actually tried to get him on the podcast to talk about what's in that vault, and he got in trouble, and somebody's got him in the basement tied up with a cork in his mouth because the poor guy's not allowed to speak. So here's the thing. I told Dave this and our listeners this a million times. They really need to hire a team that curates the band's music. They don't have to do it. I know they don't want to do it. But the thing is that if you get someone who is, number one, very tech savvy and very engineer, producer-y type of guy, and is a fan who can go through the stuff. I'll give you an example. Currently, Steve Brown worked with Ace Frehley on his new album, right? Okay.
That's right.
Now, and Ace, he put out his new album. It's great. He's doing well. It's on the charts. Now, Steve is a hardcore Ace fan. He knew what kind of Ace album his fans wanted. So he pulled out of Ace what he thought would make a great Ace album. Same thing with Andrew Watt, who did that with the Stones, who also put out a great album. Now, here's the interesting kind of trend that's happening where you have these younger guys who are fans of these older bands who want to help the older band shine that diamond up a little bit. You know what I mean? And they know how to do it. But very much like the Beatles, you have to have a team that knows what's good, how to put together a box set or some sort of release. Of course, Van Halen has that. And of course, other bands have it. I said to Dave, we always joke around, you could get the demos and live recordings of Uriah Heep, but Van Halen, which is one of the biggest American bands ever, we're losing albums. We can't even have their own studio albums. They're taking them off of streaming and things like that. So that's the thing is, you know, they're kind of not that type of band. So what I said is, and the reason why I always say Unleash the Hounds is, whoever has material that fans can enjoy, I say Unleash the Hounds because put it up on YouTube and let us all listen to it and enjoy it. No one's going to make money off of it. It's not about making money. I don't know if you saw the Tapes Archive 4-part documentary series on 1984. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. That's fantastic. That was done. Something like that, which was so much work. And it was absolutely incredible they put together. There's another guy we just interviewed. He was originally from Ireland, and then he lived in Holland. This guy did a 4-part documentary series on Eddie Van Halen. This stuff is a lot of time and effort. No one's making money off of that, but they do
what
it.
You're saying is like Peter Jackson did the Beatles Get Back thing.
Exactly.
Where they spent hours putting that thing together.
Oh my God, that was
a real treat.
Right, exactly. And look what you got. You got to go back in time and sit in the studio with the Beatles and watch them talk about songs. You watch the birth of songs that are so legendary, and you saw them as like, oh, what do you think of this, Paul? And it's, what do you think of this? And then you know that's
amazing.
Exactly. You know, yeah, we get a little frustrated, and we always talk about that, but we always say that it's like you doing your band, us doing the podcast. Not that we're equating it to what you do because you're doing a much bigger deal, but fans are curating the legacy. That's why your band, Fan Halen, perfect name, because you guys are fans of Van Halen and you're out there celebrating Van Halen. We do that here every month on the podcast. Greg Renoff put out his 2 great books. All these different things curate the Van Halen legacy because the band's not going to do it. The band's not going to do it. Right. Wolfie has said that he doesn't want to do it, which is understandable because he doesn't want to get involved in the drama and he wants to do his own career. It's fine. I actually saw him last night and he was amazing and he is doing a great job with his own career. Alex is sort of holed away somewhere. You know, Sam and Mike are doing it their own way. You know, they're out touring and doing their thing. You know, Dave, I don't know what he's doing. He's sort of like a recluse at this point.
He's ticking everybody else off is what he's doing.
Oh, he's a little mad because he's looking for cash. But listen, the bottom line is not everybody can agree. No one wants to sign off on this and sign off on that. And it becomes a big tug of war, which continued as the Van Halen turns, you know, as the soap opera continues. But
I think we might have been close to a classic live record. I remember Eddie talking about it when they made Tokyo Dome, that they went back to the vault to try to find a recording that they could remaster and put it out of Van Halen back in their prime. And he said he just couldn't find one that was...
He wasn't happy with the sound quality. You know, that's the thing. And the thing is that, listen, the sound quality back then is not going to be the sound quality of now. You can't recreate the past. However, it's going to sound like it's going to sound.
We try every weekend, but go ahead.
Right, but that's...
Yeah, but you know what? The sound quality isn't as good, but like I said, those demos and stuff that came out a few months ago...
Fantastic.
A lot of those songs were the demos that Van Halen did right around the time they got signed to Warner Brothers. And the quality of that was the best it had ever been. I mean, somebody can go in and clean it up and always make it better. But man, it was fantastic. So you have to say to yourself, like, how good do you want it to be? Because that's
Yeah.
pretty freaking good. And you almost
you guys
wonder
heard-
if Ed was too much of a perfectionist or if he was just making excuses because he really didn't want to release that stuff. Like, it just makes you wonder, like, why? When you hear that stuff and it's like, well, that sounds pretty good to me. Why didn't you go back and release it?
There's some soundboard stuff specifically around 78 and 79 that from Fresno and from San Diego.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Those sound unbelievably
I know.
good. And I don't understand why you couldn't master something like that and make that thing sound amazing. Because it sounds amazing just right off the board.
Right. Absolutely.
And that was another thing. There was like about, I don't know, maybe half a dozen shows or something like that came out a few years ago. And we're like, oh, wait a minute. There's like that many soundboard shows from the first or second tour, and you guys still aren't putting them out legitimately? It just frustrates us as fans.
Yeah.
And you just scratch your head and go, what's the problem? Why does this stuff have to leak out? Why is it so painful?
You know, listen, you got to hire a team and you got to really entrust people to work on your material, dig through, see what's there, and really get into it. You got to get into the weeds. It's not a 1, 2, 3 thing. It's an effort. But if you're going to do it, do it. Don't tell me you're making a big effort and then come out with the collection too, which is everything everybody has. It's like, guys, seriously? It's nice that they put it all together in a package. That's fine. That's all good and fine. And I think it's great that they did it. However, at the same time, it's like, you couldn't have thrown a few bonus tracks that haven't been released on there or something. Throw us a bone, you know? It's that kind of thing. I always talk about this too. They recorded a full version of In the Midnight Hour for 1984, and it's never been released. I actually talked to Alex about it 25 years ago when I interviewed him, and I asked him if it exists and everything, and he verified that and the whole thing, and I was like, wow, it was unbelievable. Eddie was sick of covers, didn't want any more covers on there, and they cut it off the album. And I was like, wow, I just wish I could hear that, only because I know they would have killed that song.
I wonder if Dave has any pull or any ability to have access to it or be able to release it, because, you know, obviously with Dave, he's starting to release a little of the John 5 stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously that was recorded just by himself, so he's going to have the ownership and,
Yeah.
and management of that. But it would be interesting to see if Dave could release Midnight Hour. That would be...
Well, I got news for you. Dave re-recorded old Van Halen songs, and somebody made him pull them off the internet.
You mean the ones he did at Henson's?
Yes. They're all gone.
They're gone.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Gone.
They're
Oh,
all,
that was
every
gone.
single one of them is
Right.
gone.
Yes.
They're all pulled. The John 5 songs are there because they're original. That's fine. And his covers that he does from other stuff that he does for fun. But all of those Van Halen covers that he did at Henson, which is essentially was not so much a recording session, but a live, whatever, rehearsal or something, whatever you wanted to call it. I guess they were like live rehearsals that were touched up. He was releasing them one at a time. He had like 14 of them, and he didn't get to all 14. I think he put out something like 8 or 9 or something like that. And he got it pulled. And first they pulled Jump on him. And I'll tell you why. Because someone could very easily buy that version of Jump and put it on a commercial, and they have his voice on there, and the sound is close enough to the original, then they lose a lot of money. Because Jump, when you lease that out for commercials, and they did it for Applebee's, and they did it for McDonald's in Europe, and all this shit, they get a lot of cash for that. It's called mailbox money. They go to the mailbox, and there's a check. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did Jump have Eddie's keys?
No,
Or did he have him?
No, they redid it. They redid it and had Dave's vocals. Dave's vocals were pretty close to the original, but they didn't have Eddie's keys, but they duplicated it to be very close. Now, here's the thing. If you're doing a commercial, close is close enough. You know what I mean? It's not like
Of course,
you're selling
exactly
it.
right.
You're just getting the feel. And if you hear the original lead singer's voice on there, then people are going to be tricked into thinking that's the original.
Absolutely.
They had this thing. It's interesting. Dave pointed this out to me, and we talked about it in the Van Halen news section. It was a European commercial for McDonald's, right? Who sees these things? Because we're not in Europe. But they had this thing, and it was an interesting commercial where I guess every time someone got a hunger tinge for McDonald's, they had this little ding there was like a bell that rung, and then everybody was like congregating to McDonald's, and Jump was playing, and they were getting everybody. It was kind of a weird commercial, but it was European, so I guess whatever. And I was like, holy shit. And then they had the Applebee's commercial for the boneless wings or whatever the fuck. And it was like, really? I mean, we're just selling this out. But what's happening is with a lot of these older rockers, right? Not just Van Halen, they're selling their catalogs, and all of the commercials going forward, you're going to see everything. You're going to see ZZ Top, Bruce Springsteen, everybody who has sold their catalog. All of those songs are going to be all over the place in commercials. What was the one I saw? It was crazy. I think I saw a We're Not Gonna Take It on like a pet control commercial or something. It was crazy. And I was like, what the hell is going on? But they're selling products to people who are from Gen Z, and that's how they want to hook them. It's really weird, but it's all psychology.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Going back to our record, I just share with you that when we did Jump, we have Eddie's recording, his keyboards, right? Because we all got that through the Guitar Hero game. So they have his keys there. So we were able to use those when we play live, but we didn't use those to record with because we didn't want to get ourselves in trouble. So we used a different version of it. It's quite obvious that it's not Eddie, but we wanted to take the safe route.
Yeah, and you don't get heat from Van Halen for doing all the stuff that you do, right?
We've never gotten heat.
No, okay, that's good. Well, I'm glad about that, and we want to thank you so much for coming on, and it's always a pleasure talking with you, Derek. Thank you so much, and we wish you best of luck. Tell us where everybody can find tour dates and merch and everything.
Yeah, it's all on our website, so it's really easy. It's just fanhalen.com, and everything is there. Our tour dates are there, merch is there, and some amazing reviews of the band. You mentioned about, was Eddie aware of us? That little thing about him saying that he looks more than me. But we have Niels Lozauer, who can't say enough about the band. And when Niels Lozauer gave us a quote, just quickly tell the story. He was going out to Vegas to see Dave when he did his residency at the House of Blues out there. And we were playing what I marketed as the after party.
Right.
Everybody who goes to the Dave show, come to our show afterwards. We're going to celebrate Van Halen into the wee hours of the night. So Dave ends up canceling all his shows. And Neil came to our show. Somebody said, hey, where are you going? Well, let's go see Fan Halen. They're playing. And so he said he was so blown away. And the quote that he gave us, he says, I've seen Van Halen, blah, 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 from all these years. And this band, I'm telling you, was, and I changed his quote. I said, you mean you've seen other Van Halen tribute bands, right? No, I don't like tribute bands. What are you talking about? I'm saying I would rather see you than I want to see Dave that night. He goes, you guys were, so he's come to a lot of shows.
Yeah.
Steve Rosen gave us an amazing review.
Great.
We got Dennis Lobolowski. Michael's brother gave us a beautiful review. Of course, Greg Renoff. We have all that up there.
That's
course,
awesome.
Lots of pictures and video and stuff. So yeah, fanhalen.com. And thank you guys both for having me as a guest. Obviously, you guys are just as passionate as I am. Maybe you guys don't wear wigs on weekends, but you guys are just as passionate as I am.
I can use a wig, Derek, because I'm bald. I'm as bald as Dave at this point, so I could use one of them wigs.
Whoa! How about that for rock video music fans? Live all day, all night. You know what you need. Only right here on Dave TV.
Check us out on Facebook at Dave and Dave Unchained, a Van Halen podcast, on Twitter at DD Unchained, on Instagram at DD Unchained Podcast, and you can email us at ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
to squeeze